Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm gonna continue the story What If Deku Built the Iron Man Suit Part 3. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
May opened her eyes. What did she do again? Oh, she was messing around with her baby. She has been busy since yesterday. What was the reason? She went around and peered through the garage doors. There he was, Izuku in Mark 1, practicing his aim by firing repulsor blasts at moving targets. She still wanted to know how this baby that pushed things away worked. She did something strange and zoomed in on his head. She was eager to see his face. His green eyes and spots. She wished to kiss him more. Kiss. Her checks got hot. She gave Izuku a kiss on the lips. He might have kissed her. Did it make a difference? Not really. She wasn't sure how to explain it. It looked like the light hit her. She wanted more of that. Was this the feeling her cousins who were women told her about? When you care about someone and want to be with them all the time? May had no idea. She remembered that he had asked if they were dating. She laughed to herself at how silly he was. They were, of course. It was a little hard for May to hear Izuku when he asked, "May, I'm going to fly around a bit, okay?" She gave a smile and a nod, and as soon as he got up, she went outside and began to watch him. She zoomed in and out with her quirk. She saw him do barrel rolls, stopping and turning around in the air, jumping up and down, and stopping and turning around again. She could watch that show all day. All of a sudden, something strange happened. Like yesterday's test, when she looked after him with her eyes. She started to feel a strange sense of calmness. She was still full of energy and excitement and could still come up with cute baby names, but being calm made everything clearer. It made her mind and body work better together. Everything was more in sync than it had ever been. Izuku let out the upset cry before she could think about it any further. She quickly looked at him and saw him jump out of a plane. The next thing she heard stopped her heart. She turned around the corner to see if anyone was after her. It was easy to see. She let out a breath and kept running away from the building. She was still more than halfway to the door. There was something in today's training that wasn't fighting at its core. It was all about being quiet. The villain team held the flash drive with data on it, so the hero team had to break into the building and get it back. She was very sure that Aizawa-sensei had made up this situation. Because there were too few students today, she ended up being the odd one out. It helped her think of how to be a hero in the future. You might not always have a backup. She had to get the short straw, though. Even Bakugo, who was her enemy, was blocked by Uraraka-chan. Anyone who wasn't on her team wanted to be on the explosive teens team. The blonde jerk was avoided by everyone except Kirishima-san. Her May began to rub against her. She looked at the building plan and remembered that the flash drive was on the last floor, so she decided that the best way to get there was to use the fire escape to climb up and enter through the roof. It was easy for her to get into the building, and she began to look around. She was lucky that she followed Uraraka-chan's angry voice. She was having a loud argument with Bakugo. From what they talked about, she knew that Blonde had left his partner again to look for her. That meant he was less powerful. Momo made a stun gun and shot a girl who wasn't looking when she turned her back on her. After quickly using the capture tape to get rid of her classmate during exercise and getting the thing she needed to finish her mission, she started walking back toward the roof exit. All Might did say that Uraraka-chan had been captured, but that was because it was a training. Then she heard a big explosion. Bakugo had a gun to her head. She made a small pouch and pinned it to her skirt to keep the USB stick safe. She used the new way to make use of her quirk. She smiled when she thought about that. For some reason, she, Midoriya, and May all thought about the case of what they called flash creation for a while. They found something when they tried to do what she did during USJ. It turns out that creation had some feelings. And if she knew how something was put together and trained herself to picture it as quickly as possible, then her quirk learned that. With only a vague idea of what she needed, creation responded, looked for the information she needed, and made it. She was so happy about it that she gave pair-making babies the tightest hug she could. She was very embarrassed afterward because of that. She heard a boom behind her. It was almost there. Not far enough. She quickly decided to give up her plan to sneak around and began running toward the exit. For a short time, She could make something to block the door, giving her time to get away. Bakugo jumped in front of her from the hallway on her right. His hand was outstretched. She was next to be hit by the loud noise and fire. Even though she put her arms around her face to protect it, the shockwave still pushed her back. How did he sneak up on her and catch her? Bagorog growled, "Got you, you extra. Surrender and I may not explode you to pieces." She felt angry because she knew that was not what a hero to be should say. She stood up and looked straight ahead. She took a stance and made a metal bow staff, getting ready to fight. He almost seemed too happy when he said, "Have it your way." He ran toward her with a mean sneer. She hit him on the shoulder and jumped back before he could hold out his hand. She had a longer reach that she needed to use, like Midoriya taught her. When Bakugo got closer, she always hit him and ran away, putting more and more damage on her enemy. She tried to make it a battle of attrition. But that made Blonde even more angry. It blew up when he pulled his hand forward, but this one was different. She closed her eyes because it was so bright. A big mistake. She felt a fist hit her stomach, which forced air out of her lungs when she tried to open her eyes. The next one hit her in the face. Finally, someone kicked her in the shoulder, which made her roll around the floor until she hit a window. Momo coughed a few times, and the tears made it hard for her to see. She blinked them off and tried to get up. Her legs were shaking. She looked up at Bakugo. He was happy and had a sneer on his face. He said, "Just stay down, like a good extra you are." She looked determined as she asked, "Or else?" He scowled at her and felt explosions on his hands. "Or I'm going to teach you your place, just like I did with Deku." That made her even more angry. Even though Momo didn't let her feelings get the best of her, Bakugo's behavior made her very angry. She didn't like how he talked about other people. But hearing how he called her, "dear friend," made her angry. At a low level, she said, "Don't call him that." Her eyes get narrow. He stopped and looked shocked for a second before his face turned into an angry animal scowl. He looked right into her eyes, but Momo didn't let him scare her. She wasn't scared of him. She told him, "You don't know who Midoriya really is or what he can do." She was trying to figure out how to get out of this mess. "Right. Forgot about you like that loser," he said in a strangely calm way. Bakugo raised his arm and took a pin out of his grenade gauntlets to point at her. "Then you can just fucking die." When he pulled out a pin, an explosion shot toward her and tore the floor and walls apart. Momo got ready for impact as Flash made a riot shield out of her stomach. She hit the glass, but it broke almost right away. The building blew her away. 10-story building. There was a rush of adrenaline through her body. She started to freak out. She was going down quickly. At that moment, Momo closed her eyes and began to think of all the things that could save her life. Shoot the harpoon. That might help. She tried to think of its parts, but she couldn't. She had nothing to say. It stopped her breathing. She was going to pass away. This very moment. She was. "Momo." Someone yelled in a desperate way. Then she felt like something metal had grabbed her behind the back and under her knees. She heard a sound that sounded like rocket engines, and the speed quickly slowed down until it stopped completely. "Are you all right?" That voice was familiar to her. She could hear it everywhere, even if it was muffled. When she opened her eyes, she saw a silver mask with eyes that were more green than white. Then it opened to show her friend's worried face. In a whisper, she said, "Midoriya." She was completely confused. She looked at him very carefully. He had on some kind of metal suit. Arc reactor was in the middle of his chest. He held her close to him with his arm in a bridal style. He asked, "Can you stand?" She shook her head and nodded. When her knees were about to give out, he gently lowered her and held her up. Still, her heart was beating so fast that it felt like it wanted to jump out of her chest. All Might pops up next to them with a rush of wind and asks, "Young Yaoyorozu, are you okay?" "I." Her voice was weak, and her mouth was dry. She took a deep breath and looked at Symbol of Peace while she sucked in her saliva. "I think so." Number 1 hero looked at her with worry and asked, "Do you need to go to the recovery girl?" "Yeah, you're definitely white," Midoriya said with worry. Momo licked her lips and said, "No. I just need to sit down for a while." "Of course. Go the observation room and rest there." "Actually," she began, looking at Green Inventor with worry in her eyes. She asked with hope, "Could I go to Midoriya's workshop with you?" All Might gave her a blink and then turned to look at her friend. All he did was nod and smile at her to make her feel better. Okay then. Young Midoriya, I'm counting on you. When his UI showed him that Yaomomo was the one who was blown off the building. His body moved before his mind could figure out what was going on. As he dove down, he grabbed the girl and held her close the whole time. He couldn't stand the thought of losing her. She was so pale and her body was shaking. Whiter than her real skin tone. And the look she was giving Hima, that look of complete fear. Seeing her like that was so wrong. In 1A, he knew of only one person who could make an explosion that big and strong. His chest was boiling with anger. What the hell did Bakugo think? That's right. How did he even think? Because of what he did, his best friend almost died. It felt like Izuku's lack of interest turned into disgust. He wanted to hit Bakugo in the face because he was so mad. Not easy. He put everything in the back of his mind, though. Right now, Yaomomo was more important. There was a problem. He was glad she asked All Might to go to the workshop. He didn't have to wait for her to come to stop Mei from going to the girl right away. He would have run with her, of course. Izuku led Yaomomo to the lockers so she could take off her superhero outfit. He told her he would fly back to the lab to take off the suit and then come get her. She reluctantly agreed. In the launch station, he saw Mei waiting for him. Her eyes were clear as glass. He only had to look at her to know that she knew what was going on. He was glad she didn't go with him. Izuku knew exactly what was going to happen next, and the locker room wasn't the right place for it. He ran back quickly because he didn't want his friend to have to wait any longer. Yaomomo was leaning against the wall and looking down at the floor with a blank look on his face. He still didn't like how pale she was. As soon as she looked at him, she ran over and grabbed his hand tightly. He put his hand on her hand. They were quiet as they walked back. Izuku kept looking at the girl with worry in his eyes. He felt sick to his stomach because the fear in her eyes didn't go away. It made him mad. As soon as they walked through the lab door, Mei jumped in and hugged their friend. The girl he was seeing was crying and shaking. The hiccuping sound that Yaomomo made quickly turned into tears. She gave two of them tight hugs and buried her face in his hair. Izuku clenched his teeth and looked like he was going to cry. He showed them the way to the beanbags. They fell right on top of them, with Yaomomo at the bottom. He tried to make her feel better by petting her smooth hair. It made him mad. He hated seeing people who were important to him in such bad shape. It hurt his feelings. His words were soft and sweet, as he told her she was safe now. She knew she was safe and that he and Mei were here just for her. He heard his girlfriend doing the same thing. It looked like it worked. His breath got smoother, but it was still jerky. She began to say, but her voice broke. She said in a whisper, I was so scared. My mind went blanking and all I could think of was how I'm not going to see my parent again. Or why you too. When she said that, more tears came out of their eyes. They didn't move for almost an hour. While they were crying, they tried to stay as close as possible. Later, when they were mostly under control, they washed their faces to look nice. Izuku texted Nezu and asked him to let the three of them go home. Key official agreed. They held on tight as they walked to the train station, and while they were riding, the girl named Yaomomo rubbed her thumbs against their hand. He and Mei sat closer to their friend and always made her feel better. After getting off the train, they went to a nearby park and found a quiet spot. No one knows how long they just sat there and hugged each other. Nezu sat still and looked at the young man with a steady gaze. Young Bakugo looked annoyed and scowled at him while he sat there fidgeting all the time. To be honest, Nezu sometimes wished he could just kick him out and be done with it. But he stopped having those thoughts. He was not going to do it. Not again. Young Bakugo needed to be shown the wrong way to do things. But he also couldn't ignore what almost happened. Nezu began with a soft voice, Young Bakugo, do you know why are you here? Teen huffed. Because some extra couldn't handle rough beat down, he said loudly. His eye moved. There was a clear superiority complex. It was almost your fault that young Yaoyorozu died, Nezu said in a harsh voice. Young Bakugo's anger seemed to go through the roof as he said, she needed to learn her place. Just like that fucking nerd. He pushed back against the comment. He had to get to the bottom of the issue. Did you mean young Midoriya, nerd? He asked. He knew the answer, but he wanted to hear it from the boy. He saw the teen's frown get worse and his eyes go from being annoyed to mean. Of course I meant shitty Deku. She's friends with that quirkless bastard. Someone must have a very bad grudge against them. He would have to figure this out. As a metaphor, a bucket of cold water might help. Nezu took a deep breath and thought about what he was going to say. Young Bakugo, while it is true that you possess a powerful quirk, it's only a quirk, a part of you. What makes a great hero isn't his battle prowess, but his effort and choices. Don't let a society-twisted logic cloud your sight from your noble goal. He looked at the teen. There wasn't much interest in his speech. Because of what you did today, I could easily kick you out of this school, Nezu said, making the young man twitch. But I won't. I want to help you, young Bakugo. Starting tomorrow, you will meet with Hound Dog, one of your school psychologists, twice a week. Nezu didn't notice the angry look on the teen's face. However, allow me to get one matter straight. Izuku Midoriya is a kind of person who appears only once every few generations. He's similar to Tesla, Einstein, Hawking. Genius that can change our world with his theories and inventions. His acts are going to shape our future. If your issues with young Midoriya get better of you, if you decide to attack him like you did during yesterday's lunch, if you decide to destroy his work, I am not the one to hesitate. Your expulsion will be immediate. He ended with a tone that didn't allow debate. He was sure the message got through when he saw how tense young Bakugo was. You can go now. Nezu saw the teen walk away. He hoped this time would be different. It would hurt a lot to lose another student because of their own fears and biases. Momo was glad that her classmates were worried about her health. But it was strange to be showered with love like that. And maybe too much. Girls pretty much never left her side and talked to her about everything. Style, heroes, classes, food, hot guys, and fashion. The boys were looking at her with worry, and some of them told her they were glad she wasn't too hurt. In his own strange and evil way, even Mineta. Then there was Bakugo, who shut himself off from everyone in his class. Kirishima-san was the only one who tried to talk to him. He got either a cold, dirty look or a scared look at most. Like Aizawa-sensei, she looked at the blonde every once in a while. Momo knew that the way Bakugo was treated was a bit much. She tried to care, but she just couldn't. Putting it in Mei's words, that jerk almost killed her. She was glad her friends stayed in the park with her until it got dark. She had to get in touch with them. As soon as she got home, her parents jumped on her and gave her a tight hug. This was known to them because of the principal call. Mother told them about Mei and Midoriya and how they helped her. That made her parents feel a little less worried. She skipped over the part where Midoriya's Mark I suit saved her life. Mark I armor that is powered by the arc reactor she helped him make. That was a really cool piece of tech. To make something like that. She was amazed again by Midoriya's genius. He did say that the suit wouldn't be ready or work as well as it does without Mei and some of her ideas. Their friends were really great. She looked through the crowded canteen to find the couple making babies. They were sitting on the small table near the door. A tablet stood between them as they stared at each other in silence. It didn't look right, they always agreed. She asked with a little worry, "What's going on?" They looked at her briefly before going back to their staring contest. He then reached into his pocket and took out an earpiece. She put it on after taking it. "Finalia, please. Try to reason with them. They're being childish," Alan cried out. She looked at her friends with a raised eyebrow. Momo knew they would talk to her at some point. "We're having a fight," Mei said reluctantly. In a deadpan tone, Midoriya said, "About a paint job." Painting? What happened was that those two very smart people got into a fight. Alan was right, they were really stupid. Mark II is being planned, and Izuku wants to paint it. "That's fine with me, because our baby needs to show itself," Mei said, putting her hands on her chest. "That's one reason. The other is that due to the change of the material, Mark II is now gold and it looks horrible. I've tried to add some viridian, but it still screams attention." So then Mei suggested he looked at the other inventor. To paint gold to black. It would look totally badass and show everyone just how great this baby is. But of course Izuku thinks she said with a slight glare. That it would scare people away. It looks bad. He almost spat out the last word. Midoriya put tape on the tablet a few times and gave it to her. She looked at it and saw the green and gold armor that looked like Mark I's. She got what her friend meant. It really made people pay attention. That was the exact opposite of what the boy wanted. Besides, she thought it looked off in some way. She took a deep breath and clicked on the next tab. It didn't look right. She got chills when she saw those glowing eyes on the black faceplate. Also, there was too much black. The feeling it gave off was really scary. Mama ate her lunch slowly while she thought of a way to help her friends stop their pointless argument. Either way, they would keep fighting, so she had to make everyone happy. And she wasn't interested in that. She got their attention by saying, "How about?" They looked like they were waiting. Maybe instead of Viridian, use some lighter shade of malachite. Put silver on gold parts. And to make it pop, a darker tone of gray here and there. She saw her friends. May tilted her head, and Midoriya was sitting down to think. "Well, Alan, amazes," the green inventor told him. Everyone looked at the tablet. A new tab opened with Mark II that was all gold. It was awful. Then it started to change colors from the bottom up. As soon as the render was done, it started spinning slowly and showing itself from all sides. May was thrilled and said, "Wow, it looks great." Midoriya said, "Yeah, I love it. That's exactly what Suit needed." The two people making babies smiled at her as they turned to face her. Momo was thrilled that she could help them. But she had to close her eyes. How did they always do it? Izuku was making plans for Mark II's gear and hoped they would be ready before the sport festival. Without a doubt, he would need it. The ping stopped him. That wasn't the message sound. He did it for his own project. He made a huge grin with his lips. He chose it to be one of the last groups of information they needed. Now this was more important. He had to look over everything and make changes to his files. Hearing doors open made him look away from the computer. When Yaomomo walked in, her polite smile turned into a happy one right away. That's what he had seen over the past few days. Ever since the accident, the girl felt at ease when she was with him or May and stopped trying to be so polite. She touched their hands or leaned in a little sometimes. And every time it did, his heart skipped a beat. Which made no sense at all to him. He loved May, and the two of them were together. It's not right for him to feel that way about his best friend. He had to get over this emotional mess right away. Toshiko, who was sitting in the other office chair, asked, "How is the work going?" "Good. We're getting babies for Mark II ready. Some are still in the design phase, but I'm sure we will get them ready for Sport Festival. At least some of them." May replied with her usual joy. Something he wasn't ready for then happened. May went over to Yaomomo and sat on her lap in a strange way. Their friend's slightly open jaw shows that she wasn't expecting it either. He watched as she slowly moved her hand and petted his girlfriend. When his partner leaned in to touch her, her smile turned into a happy one. He thought this scene looked good for him. It was just right. After he got over being confused, Izuku said, basically what she said. "Mark II needs to be built and tested, but we think everything will work out in the end," he said with a small smile. Yaomomo said, "I'm glad to hear that. Actually, I came to ask you about something." He cocked his head. Was she looking for better, creative glasses? That will have to wait until after the sport festival. Or maybe it had nothing to do with the hero support business. What might that be, if so? "I'm very interested in how have you managed to make your suit fly. You've said something about repulsor tech, but after researching it, I found nothing about it," she said, looking at him with curiosity. "Right. You still haven't told me about that baby," May said as she moved around on Yaomomo's lap. How could he say no to their desire to learn? He wasn't able to. He couldn't help but have fun with it, though. He put his elbow on the workbench, put his hand on his chest, and smirked at them to tease them. He said in the softest voice he could muster, "Oh, I don't know. That stuff is pretty hard and boring. I don't want you to fall asleep." He thought it was totally worth it to see them pout and look mad at him. Izuku got up and went to the holotable. He looked at the repulsor system and the girls as he got the Mark II design. Okay, as you can see, it all starts from arc reactor. Not only it's the power source, but also it gives necessary stuff to the repulsors in chest piece, hands and soles of the boots, but about that later. Repulsor's system is a bit similar to Hadron Collider. It's a miniature particle accelerator. Part of its product are muons. For those who don't know atomic physics, muons are subatomic particles, similar to electrons, but much heavier than them. Also, they possess a short half-life time, but they can penetrate very deep. Their sources are cosmic rays or particle accelerators. To make muon, you need to have a bundle of proton, which are supplied from reactor, collide with a sort of barrier. That barrier is placed at the end of those special cables, just before the repulsor outlet. Of course, to do it, protons need to be accelerated to a near light speed. You archive it thanks to the coils placed around those cables. The other part that is produced in repulsors is plasma. You get it due to the energizing the air supplied by other system. So muons and plasma mix together, and that super energetic mixture can give the suit necessary thrust to archive liftoff and flight. It can also be used as a weapon. Repulsor blast can do some serious damage if I desire so, but I use them mostly as a sort of knockout tool. He ended with satisfied smile. He saw Yaomomo with an open mouth and a glowing face as he looked at the girls. She blinked at him a few times. It looked like she was going to say something, but she didn't. In terms of Mei, he was once again completely scared of her. His nerdy talk made her feel good. Her eyes were cloudy and her face was pink. She coughed hard, and a small drool came out of her mouth. She was shaking, but not because she was cold. He got girls by making them think he had a cough. Okay, that's pretty much it. A fancy particle accelerator, he said with a soft laugh. Yaomomo said in a weak voice, I don't know what to say. Mei was so excited she screamed, "How do you make such wonderful babies?" Izuku shook his head and leaned back in his chair. Don't know, ask my brain. That made them all laugh. He was glad to be able to tell them this. Even though that girl wasn't an inventor like he and Mei were, she still wanted to learn and get better. He had respect for that. He had an idea all of a sudden. The one that would either help his friend and improve his chances of success or hurt their friendship. Did he feel lucky today? That was the question. He did, for sure. He began by smiling innocently at Yaomomo. Actually, I have something else to share with you. Something that will help not only you, but all of us, to get a rather decent placement in Sport Festival. Maybe even win a whole thing. He saw her eyes light up as he spoke. Okay. He had to take it now and shape it into what he wanted and what she needed. While she waited for him to go on, Yaomomo pushed a chair closer and tilted her head. Her springiness was hard to hold in. What I'm about to show you is the result of work that took almost a month, he said. He took a deep breath and pursed his lips a little. Just all I'm asking you is to have an open mind, okay? Izuku saw her nod. He chose the folder with an unknown name and typed in the password. There were more folders, but they were all named after first-year classes. He opened 1A and showed Yaomomo files with her classmates' names on them. When he opened one, he showed her many pages that talked about the quirk, physical fitness, character traits, strengths and weaknesses, and finally, possible ways to beat them. He watched as his friend carefully read it all, word for word, page after page. He could tell from the look on her face that she was both interested and scared by how much information he had. She sucked on her lip and furrowed her brows when she was done. She finally said after licking her lips a few times and trying to come up with a sentence. She couldn't hide her shock as she asked, I must say. This is quite something. But just, how did you get it all and why? Izuku almost smiled when she looked at him. Her eyes lit up because she was so eager to learn. How? I've got access to every camera in the school, courtesy of Alan. Of course he didn't want to give them. He told me that, if I can hack the system, he wouldn't say a thing, he said with a calm tone. His girlfriend told him, I did the hacking, which made him laugh. She made a pouty face, but he told her, you sure did. Mei is a great hacker, but she can't program anything. As for why? Izuku paused and looked like he was thinking more deeply. All my life I was ridiculed for not having a quirk. Our society sees them as a trait more important than anything else. They define us and categorize us by them. By not having one, I became the element that wasn't able to fit anywhere. But I had something better. I had my mind. I trained it by reading books, solving puzzles, learning new things and analyzing others. He looked at shocked Yaomomo. As it was said long time ago, knowledge is a power. And Sport Festival isn't only a test of our quirks and muscles. It's also a test of our ability to gather information, plan for future and adapt for unexpected. Her gaze was concentrated on him. No hero or villain is invincible. Every human being possessed something that could lead to their fall. It's just a matter of knowing it. That's why I developed those profiles, those plans to take down not only a hero class students, but any other. His fists tightened. While I want to become a hero with every fiber of my being, I want to prove the society wrong. Show them that quirks aren't everything that determines us. I want to prove myself. Prove that I can stand next to the other heroes. He grinned and extended his open palm towards Odd Yaomomo. So I want to throw everyone's expectations through the window by advancing to the finals? Nezu was amazed by the looks on the teachers' faces. The shocked looks on their faces really helped his bad mood. It looked like Mike, Midnight, and Vlad were going to pass out. 13 in Ectoplasm spoke quietly. Hound Dog's mouth was wide open. He rubbed his head while his eyes were closed. Yagi was shocked and amazed. And Power Loader just joined him in laughing so hard that it was almost crazy. It was all because Midoriya explained how the repulsor technology worked. In the middle of the meeting, he had to thank Alan for putting it on the recorders. Vlad asked in a weak voice, "How is he doing in high school?" "Yeah, he should teach physics in the college," then Mike said. Midnight groaned and said, "I never want to hear anything about physics again." The Power Loader laughed and said, "Knowing that kid, he's going to do something like that again. I certainly hope for that. I still remember how he called his arc reactor. In simple terms, it's just a very fancy cold fusion," Nezu said with a smile. Ecoplasm said in his usual rough voice, "He built something that no one thought was possible, and on such a small scale." 13 added, completely shocked, "Midoriya just changed some of our physics laws. Let's be amazed and talk about it later. For now, I need everyone to leave my office except for Hound Dog and Aizawa," Nezu said in a polite voice. Nezu's small smile went away when the door shut. He looked at Hound Dog and Eraserhead. After a short pause and a heavy sigh, the psychologist began. "To be Hinesta, I don't really know how to work with that kid. I had some problematic ones before. Buddha, he sees every questions like a sort of disgrace and thinks, quoting him, that I'm looking down on him. The case of superiority and inferiority complexes are clearly evident. He just stares at me with those angry eyes all the time, and when the time is over, he walks away, slamming the doors shut. I can't press on him, because that will only make matter worse. Buddha, I'm running out of the ideas of what to ask to not trigger him," Hound Dog said. Aizawa said, "Maybe a thorough background check would be helpful." For a moment, Nezu played with his paws, and a frown showed on his face. A sad voice said, "I'll get it done as fast as I can." Hound Dog said in a soft voice, "Principal." To make her feel better, he said, "That kid wasn't your fault. And we learned from it. We won't make the same mistake again." Nezu looked sad as she looked out the window. "I really hope you're right about it." Momo lay on her bed and looked up at the sky. Today was the sport festival, and she needed to rest for it. But she couldn't fall asleep because her mind was too full of random thoughts. And it all had something to do with the couple making babies. Not even the romance manga she loved could help. It was her right hand that she held up and looked at. The same one that took Midoriya's hand to show that she wanted to be a part of his big plan. May also put out her hand, of course. In the last week of getting ready, she went over suggested plans for what they should do at different times of the festival, giving her opinion and changing what needed to be changed. They didn't know what games would be played, but everything was about the same thing. Staying together and helping each other get ahead. They were sure that the third round would be a fight between two people. It was always that way. They ruled out all the possible outcomes of not having a hero student move on to the next part. It's not that they didn't believe in other paths and people's drive, especially those who were trying to become heroes. They took it seriously, but by looking at the files of her in 1B classes, she knew that it was unlikely that they would fail. Very low. She looked at the profiles of the heroes in the course and thought of ways to beat them. There were easy ones, hard ones, and ones where it all came down to what she and her opponent did. Momo let out a sigh and turned to look at her hand from the side. Hikaru and Mei are her best friends. The first people she really liked. To Midoriya, that was no longer right. The thought of calling him by name made her feel like Mei does. To see how that sounded, she whispered, "Izuku." It was good for her. It made her heart beat faster. She also asked that they call her by name. She wanted to be close to them, Hug them, hold their hands, look into their beautiful eyes, pet their soft hair, hear them laugh and talk, and see their big smiles. She stopped thinking. Did you know you should feel that way about your friends? Some of them were girls and boys from her class, and one was Kendo from 1B. They were all nice to Momo, and she wanted to spend time with them, but none of them were as close to her as Mama and Daddy. She shut her eyes and tried to sleep. With a warm smile on her face, she soon dreamed of spending time with Izuku and Mei. Mei turned her screwdriver a few times until she hit something that stopped her. The last bolt was tight. She jumped on her bed and stretched after putting her baby away. Tomorrow was already making people feel excited. She could finally show everyone how smart she was and how cute her babies were. It wasn't just hers. She and Izuku both had rights to them, so it was the same. Yes? She thought back to the plans he and Yaomomo had made. She did talk about her ideas from time to time. She wasn't really into the strategies at first, but as she listened to them talk about it over and over, ideas began to form in her mind. They were very grateful for her help. At first, she just wanted to make it to the one-on-one phase, play one match, and be done with it. That way, she could show off her cute babies. But her boyfriend and a friend told her it was important to show that those cute kids would work in different situations. She was most worried that the batteries wouldn't last long, but Izuku was a good boyfriend and helped her make everything better so that it could work with arc reactors. She gave him a good kiss for it. In the middle of the fight, she no longer had to worry about her babies stopping to feed her. It didn't matter that she still didn't know when he made more than 20 of them. Izuku and Yaomomo taught her some CQC moves and told her what to do with each one. She didn't really know how to fight. To improve her chances of moving on, she would read up on her opponent before the match and quickly come up with a move. She could make do with what she had, so she hoped everything would work out. She could always ask Izuku or Yaomomo for help if she didn't have anything with her. They'd be happy to help her out. There is no doubt. Oh my gosh, it was still too long. She said the name several times. Momo, Momo, Momo. It seemed better, and easier to say. She would only talk about her friend as Momo from now on. Oh, hello funny, happy feeling in the stomach. She had that almost every day by now. She really hasn't felt the same way since she sat on the girl's lap. She seemed to like Momo. What a stupid question. She did, of course. But did she like her as much as Izuku did? She really did love Izuku. That boyfriend-girlfriend thing was going on. Let's get back to the subject at hand. Did she? She wasn't sure for sure. Putting Momo up against her 1A friends seemed like a silly thing to do. Mei didn't dislike them. Momo was the only one who really understood her, held her hand, hugged her, talked and laughed with her, and bounced around with her when a cool baby was done. Oh, Izuku did the same thing. The only difference was that he kissed her instead of jumping around. That means she might have liked Momo too. But there's no point in dwelling on that. It was solved on its own with Izuku, and it will be solved here too. She was sure of it. She closed her eyes and said she dreamed that everyone in the world was amazed by her babies. Momo and Izuku were also there, hugging her tightly. In her sleep, she smiled at the scene. Momo took a look at the locker. Everyone was already dressed in their athletic clothes. Some people were talking, while others were just sitting there quietly. A small group of people joined her to do some simple stretches to warm up. She didn't want to get hurt and miss the chance to show off her skills. That would be very bad for her hero cover. She also didn't want to let Izuku and Mei down or worry them. She sighed. She called him Izuku again. The fact that she could think of his name made her feel way better. She wasn't sure if she could say it out loud, though. Right in his face. That thought makes her cheeks heat up. Someone yelled very loudly and said something about squashing someone like a bug. There was no need for her to turn around to see the person. Alan's voice came through the speaker and said, "All students, get ready to leave your lockers. The sport festival will start in a few minutes." Momo told her class as she opened the doors, "Everyone, get ready. We're going into the tunnel, but don't step into the field until we say so." From the edge of the tunnel, she could see that the stadium was packed with people. They were already making noise to show how excited they were. She saw a few heroes in the crowd, but she was sure there were many more. It was only natural that they would want to watch them and maybe send them a job offer. Soon, the voice of the present mic came on, getting even more people excited. Now, without any more delay, Get ready to give a cheer to those guys, from Hero Course, the class that already had a run with real villains and came out without the scratch. Class 1A. Momo took a deep breath and led her class out into the field in the morning. She put up her hand and waved to the people who would be watching them do their best. She stopped soon after Midnight stood on the stage. The introductions that came next were completely clear. Plus, they didn't really want to run with bad guys, so she felt bad for them, until the support course came along. Now from the support department, Class 1H, and leading them into the field is no other than a student, who should teach at the university. Trust me when I say, that his nickname, Genius Boy, is well deserved. When Momo turned around, she saw her friends with their classmates. May was really excited and jumping around while waving her arms. She had her jetpack, hover boots, and a modified grapple gun with her. The girl's weird headset around her head makes her look cute. Izuku, on the other hand, hid his face in his hand. She knew that Mike-sensei had basically picked him out. The boots and gloves from Mark 1, but without the armor, were on him. An arc reactor and a regulator were strapped to his chest. All of this was done to hide his real ace before the third phase. When every class was on the stadium, Present Mike's voice screamed again. Now the judge for the first year will be your favorite, R-rated hero. Midnight. That was the cue for the woman to start posing and showing off her beautiful body, which made mostly men cheer. As for the commentary, today I'm joined by two gentlemen. One of them is a grumpy ninja, Eraserhead, and the other Onia, our beloved principal, Nezu. Yes, I am here. The principal's voice could be heard all over the stadium. I couldn't miss the opportunity to not see, with my own two eyes, the show first year would give us. There is so many talented young man and woman down there. He seemed happy. Right as always. Now we hand the voice to the Midnight. Thank you, she said, then took out her whip and hit the air with it. Let us start with the athlete oath from the student, who placed first on the entrance exam. Katsuki Bakugo, please come here. Sorry. Mother was scared as the team climbed up one step at a time toward the microphone. This was bad. This was awful. She felt a big pit form in her stomach. I'm sure Bakugo would do something stupid, like start a war with the other classes, which would make her and her friends look like big targets. He said, athlete oath, without saying anything else. Bakugo turned around and sneered at all the classes. Here's one. I'm taking the first place. You extras can settle for second one. The Momo let out a sad sigh. Making a war was better than this. The boos and angry screams from the crowd and other students were well deserved. But did he really need to say, extras? 1A was already having trouble because they had taken out the bad guys. There's no need to make things worse between them and other classes. She caught up to Midnight and told her something about the first game being a tie. She saw a machine that changed names quickly on the big screen. Obstacle Race was finally chosen. She knew the rules ahead of time. Along with Baby Making Duo, she went over all the games that had been used in Sport Festival before. As people fought for the first spot leading to the exit, she met up with her friends in the middle of the crowd. May yelled, Momo, and gave her a tight hug. The way she talked about her surprised her, but it made her feel good. She smiled and smiled back at him. Hi, May. I love your headset. The girl just smiled and stood next to her. Izuku walked up to them and gave her the Creative glasses. She took them and used them right away. She said with thanks, thank you, Izuku. Hold on, Ayamina. He smiled and said, no problem, Momo. Her worry went away. He didn't mind that she called him that, though. He also told her first name. To hide her red cheeks, she turned to the side. Then she saw Todoroki-san standing in front of the crowd. She looked at the teen with a wary eye and said, he'll try to freeze us in the tunnel. No doubt about it. The first problem is getting out of here, Izuku said. May put goggles over her eyes and asked, so how do we do it? Momo asked, can we fly above the stadium wall? Not with the current configuration of my regulator. It can't sustain such a long flight, he said with a sad look. That made her nod. The narrow passage, which Todoroki-san would turn into the ice cage, was the only choice left. How about flying over their heads? The two people who were making babies looked at each other with their eyebrows raised. I could help my hover boots by shooting grapple gun at the ceiling and swinging, May told me. Yes, Izuku said, doable. He then sent her a sly grin. You prefer a piggyback or princess hold ride? Please ride on my back, she said with red cheeks. She couldn't give in to the urge and choose the second option. When they heard the count, Momo quickly climbed up on Izuku's back. She hoped putting herself down would be worth it. She watched as a lot of students rushed in and tried to move forward, but they weren't very successful. After that, it got cold, and ice covered everyone's feet, making them feel lost. That was their sign. Mei then did what she had said she would do earlier. Momo was amazed at how smoothly and gracefully she moved. She also looked like she was having a good time. When she and Izuku were together, she heard the hum of the reactor and repulsors coming to life and lifting them up. They flew high above their classmates because they didn't want to burn anyone by accident. She saw some of her classmates break through the ice and shoot at Todoroki-san, probably to beat him to first place. She wished she could cheer them on as they finished the task, but she knew the sad truth. The teen was too good for that to happen. They began running at a moderate speed after landing and getting off Izuku. It was supposed to end in the middle. These things were not very useful. It kept them from getting too much attention, used up their energy, and didn't show what they could really do. Izuku also couldn't run fast in those boots. She heard a scream from the front all of a sudden. As she looked forward, she saw the big robots and a bunch of smaller ones blocking their path. If she remembered right, those were used on the entrance exam. One of the 0-pointers she saw turned into an icicle and quickly fell. Mama frowned. It looks like they'll have to use creation to get through it. She looked around to see which way was safest. There was a single 0-pointer off to the side. It looked around like it didn't know what to do. She wasn't sure why, but it made her think of a lost puppy. She pointed at the confused robot and said, "This way." The two people making babies nodded, and they ran toward it. As they got closer, 0-pointer snapped his eyes at them and began to walk toward them. Happily, that was when the robot laid down in front of them. She was about to use flash creation and get the gun. Its red eyes got brighter. It made a whine that she could hear and understood as "Foth hair." Momo was about to choke on her saliva. What was going on? Mei yelled and jumped around the teen. Oh my god, it recognizes you, Izuku. This baby recognizes its creator. She looked at her friend, who had her mouth open and was staring at the 0-pointer. Right, he reprogrammed them while he was taking the entrance exam. He suddenly turned to face them with the sneakiest grin she had ever seen on his face and a dangerous look in his eye. I've got an idea. He knew it. He made the call. He was right. His seventh sense was right on, and almost all of his teachers owed him money. But that didn't make him feel any less confused. That wasn't helped by Nezu's crazy laughter either. It was crazy that Izuku Midoriya was a problem child. Powerloader told him that his partner would be a problem child. It had to get worse, though. They were making his class bad. He knew it had to be one of the smartest kids in the class. Why is he always there? Why did he have to go through so much pain? Still, Shota couldn't help but smile big when he saw 3 problem children riding on the 0-pointer's shoulder and getting ahead of their opponents. Mike yelled into his mic, "Do you see it, people? I don't know how that happened, but let me say this, only Genius Boy could do something like that." "Alan, which 0-pointer is it?" Nezu asked, finally able to cut his laughter. "The one that dug out Uraraka-san from under the concrete," the AI replied. He smiled big and said, "Oh, it's Puppy." Shota had to ask, "Puppy?" Because the name was so silly. Yeah, he behaved like a lost puppy when he tried to find a way to move around the girl. That's strange. Shota thought it made sense. Woohoo! Mei was so happy she could not hold back her screams. It was really exciting. She never thought she'd be able to ride such a big kid, but there she was. It made Izuku and Momo laugh to hear how she reacted. She begged, "Come on guys, do one with me." It was always more fun to make things with other people. With their arms raised in the air, they all let out a happy shout. Her friend and boyfriend were great. She asked them, "So, what now?" They were smart. He said, "Thanks to the 0-pointer, we're getting closer to the front of the race. We need to fall behind a bit." Izuku looked at the robot's head and said, "Yeah, but thanks to the..." The two of them quickly said, "Puppy," and smiled at each other. There is no better name for a sweet and devoted child. He laughed and said, "Sure, why not?" He smiled and said, "Thanks to Puppy, we have more energy for the next event." May asked with a tilted head, "The next on is a team thing, right?" "Yes. There's always some kind of game that forces students to show their teamwork skill. Usually the size is between 2 and 4 people," Momo said, excited. "So they could add someone else? Should they? Most likely, it will depend on the event." She was looking forward to finally showing some of her babies. How else could support groups send her their offers? Izuku was interested and asked May, "Can you see the next problem?" She did something strange and zoomed in. It's some kind of rock formation. There are platforms of various sizes and ropes connecting them together. "Oh, there's a pit between those platforms," she told us. Mama asked with hope, "Can Puppy get us through?" "I don't think so. He can get us to first one, but he won't be able to move across." May looked sad. That sweet baby would have to stay behind. They might be able to go there sometimes. It was something she was excited about. Izuku said in a grumpy voice, "Well, better this than nothing." He also wanted to stay with the child. He was a great dad. They soon got to the problem. People who were standing next to the chasm were shocked to see them. "Okay. When you see a great baby, that was the right thing to do." Izuku told the girls, "Okay, hold tight." She stood next to Momo and grabbed the puppy's armor where it was sticking out. Her boyfriend told her, "Puppy, please carry us over." Zero Pointer got down on its knees and leaned over the chasm to grab the platform with its arms. The safety passage was safe because it was long enough. They run across quickly. May looked down and was glad she wasn't on the ground. She turned around and walked up to the robot's head. It was time to pat the baby. Her partner and a friend also petted it to show their appreciation. Robot made a sound to show that it was happy. She said with a big smile, "Thanks, Puppy." Mama added with a little worry, "Go back safely on the other side." Izuku said with pride, "Yeah. I don't want one of my babies to get hurt by accident." Then he sent a shy, sweet smile with his eyes closed. "Oh, Puppy. Be a dear and help your father with one more thing. Destroy as many cords connecting this platform to the other side as you can. But don't hurt anyone." Puppy replied, "Yes." It stood up straight and looked around. He carefully aimed and swung his sword down its huge arm, cutting several ropes at once. They heard yelling from the other side. That was part of the plan, if she remembered right. They wanted to get rid of as many people as possible and make them work as hard as they could. That kind of thing. Izuku told Momo, who was already on his back, "Let's go now." They looked so cute. May could feel her smile. She speeds up and moves toward the edge of the platform while her hover boots are on. She used her quirk to find a good place to shoot her grapple gun during her fall. It hit, which made her swing. Having the wind blow around her made her heart beat faster, which she loved. Since the jetpack on her back had been upgraded to repulsor tech, she would only use it if she had no other choice. If she remembered right, it had something to do with showing her hand too soon. That was it. That strange sense of calmness, even though she was excited. It was helpful, but she didn't know how or why she got it. After work, she should ask Izuku about it. He would know. Or Momo. In fact, they would both know. They knew how to deal with oddities. When we talked about them, May saw a pair flying from cord to cord. The girl made a knife and cut them. She thought for a moment about whose idea it was. As soon as she hit the ground again, she looked ahead and sped up. The boy with the two-toned hair was still at the front of the pack. Todoroki? That kind of thing. The blonde jerk was getting close to him. There were also some other students right behind them. She knew Sue and that strange guy with glasses. Soon, Izuku and Momo joined her, and they ran forward again. It said, "I see the next obstacle, it's minefield." Her friend asked, "How does it look?" "You can see the mines. Ground around them is darker. Spaces between them are enough to travel safely, but you need to watch your steps," she told me. When they got there, they saw all the students walking carefully around the mines. Unless you were in charge. 2 of them were out in the field fighting, each trying to get ahead of the other. Blonde Jerk used his trade to fly above the ground. Izuku moved forward and put out his right arm. He pointed and grabbed his wrist with the other hand. "Izuku?" Momo asked, interested in what he was doing. He made a face with his lips stretched out. "Just watch." He shot a blast at the ground near the feet of the leader. Around them, mines started going off, making a lot of pink smoke. Soon, more came along and blocked the view completely. Her friend laughed and her boyfriend laughed, which made her laugh too. However, Mei didn't understand why. As soon as the smoke rose, she laughed with Izuku. It's said that his shot and the first explosion made two boys trip, which then cleared most of the field from its half near the end. Leaders were already running to the entrance to the stadium that could be seen. Her partner was happy to say, "Now we can cross." Mei turned on her hover boots and helped them move. Izuku had the most trouble because of his boots. She wanted to ask them why they did what they did, but the fact that they were passing them was the answer. They did want to end somewhere in the middle. It was their call, but she didn't know why. Mei had a great thought as she ran through the tunnel. She grabbed their hands and made them all touch shoulders. They looked at her with puzzled looks on their faces. She said with a big smile, "That way we can get the same place, just like the team should." Izuku and Momo laughed, but their grip got tighter. They looked at her and gave her little smiles. They both went out into the field at the same time. It made her very happy to hear the crowd cheer. It was her hope that they would love her babies. They would, of course. After riding a giant robot, destroying most of the cords and half of the mine field, Momo Yaoyorozu, Mei Hatsume and Izuku Midoriya take the 22nd place together. "What's up with those kids? Are they some kind of power team?" Present Mike shouted with joy. "They came 22nd. How did that taste?" She hoped so. They worked together, of course, the best thing that could be. She peeked at her friends. It worked out well for them. She was the same way. Someone whined, "Hey, that's not fair, they have gear." When Mei turned around, she saw a small group of people around them, with a guy in the middle who had purple balls on his head. If she remembered right, Momo had told her that this guy was a pervert who looked at all girls, but especially her friend. The kid made her mad. Izuku said with a smug grin, "Actually it is fair." "Yes, support students can bring and use their inventions," Momo said with a smile. Sue asked Yaoyorozu-chan, "But why do you have your glasses on?" "Two reasons." Mei yelled at the students, who had no idea what she meant. "That's the first one. It's something I made and brought with me," her boyfriend said. "And second one is that I've filled a special form to allow it. As long as the item doesn't give you direct advantage, you can freely use it. Things like Aoyama-san's belt or Sato-san's sugar containers." Momo ended with a small smile. "You could do that?" Mina asked with her eyes wide open. "Yup, it's in the rules. You can read them on the school internet site. Mei told me. That was something she herself knew, thanks, Izuku." Some people nodded when Kyoka asked, "Okay, but why were you guys working together?" Mei gave a big smile at that. She laughed for a short time while hugging Izuku and Momo tightly. They hugged her back, because we're a team. Izuku was happy with how the first event turned out. They saved a lot more energy because they made Puppy by accident, which was pretty clear. Most of the people who made it to the second event were tired and gasping for air. They did get some attention while riding Zero Pointer, but he and Momo both agreed that it was worse than the good. Plus, they had a good time. It's time for him to find out what went wrong with Puppy's program that made him so different from other robots. Momo, that sounded strange and right at the same time. He was so thrilled to be able to call her by name. Mood swings got worse, though. He didn't have time to think about it. Midnight waved her whip and said, "Get ready, we're going straight to the second event." 42 of the students stood next to the chair and waited for the game to be chosen. The plans began to play out in Izuku's mind. The second event always had a team-based activity. His boots and gloves would give them some strength. Mei would let them move around freely, and Momo, who was a live factory, would make tools to meet their needs. In the end, it came down to what game they had to play. They might have to go take one more person. When the machine stopped, Izuku looked up and saw the words, "Cavalry Battle," on the screen. Because they are different heights, that one would be a little tricky, but they could do it. Most likely by finding someone who is a good match for Momo. He could feel Mei pulling on him. Yes, they did need to get their friend. He could see Bakugo being asked by his classmates to join their team as he pushed through the crowd. He looked really mad, which was normal for him. It was finally time to see Momo. She was talking to Todoroki. From what I could tell, he wanted to hire her. Oh well, bad luck, icy boy. As she grabbed the girl's hand, May said, sorry, she's taken. Yeah, we're a team. I hope you get it, he said, taking the other hand. Momo gave the girl a soft smile and a light squeeze on the palms. Right, I'm with them. Todoroki-san. He looked at them blankly, blinked, and then turned around to look for other possible teammates. His friend sighed and said, thanks for the safe. Izuku said, no problem, now we need to find someone. The Momo raised an eyebrow. Do we really need to? While scanning the crowd for a possible candidate, he said, I guess. Unless you want to be a rider. But May would be a better one. She could freely observe around and aim better if she's up. A tired voice said, those are some nice boots you have there, Pinkhead. Thank you, though, was May's short answer. Izuku turned his head to the left. The man he saw was tall, had wild indigo hair, and eyes that looked like his. The eyes had deep bags under them. He quickly thought of the file about the teen and smiled to himself. He won a lot of money. May? Are you okay? Izuku asked, acting like he didn't know what was going on while grabbing the girl by the shoulder. She looked around and asked, what? She was clearly lost. He pushed her back to Momo and smiled at them. He saw the boy frowning and getting ready to leave when he turned around. Teen stopped when Izuku called out, hey, do you want to join our team? Boy looked at him with wide eyes. It looks like what he said was true. He was really bad at making friends. We were looking for a fourth person, and you're high enough to match Momo. That would be great for our team's balance, he said with a warm smile. He put out his hand and said, my name is Izuku Midoriya. The teen was shocked and asked, what? He seemed torn between being happy and overwhelmed as he asked, are you sure you want me? He was excited to answer, yeah, you're going to fit great, I'm sure of it. But, I tried to steal your teammate with my quirk, aren't you like, crazy? He still didn't seem to believe what was going on. Izuku kept up his obvious act and asked, steal with your quirk? Oh, you have some kind of mind control power? That's so useful for heroics. You could resolve any conflict before it even begins. It was true. That kind of quirk would be very helpful for Hero. Have you thought about applying to Hero course? He already knew the answer. Boy scratched his head and said, yeah. It was a shy peek at Izuku. I heard that depending on how well we do in sports festival, we could get a transfer to Hero class, he said with a longing voice. Then let me help you. Join us and you'll get a chance to show what you can do in one-on-one. We're all aiming for third round. Sue. His arms started to stiffen. He took Izuku's hand and said, sure, I'm Hitoshi Shinso. He smiled and said, nice to meet you, Shinso-kun. Then he turned to look at the girls, who were looking at them with interest. Go grab the gear. May smiled big and started to jump to show how excited she was. What should we bring? Anything that is good for containment, but nothing too fancy. We still need to keep our hand hidden, he told us. The girls said, yes, and ran to their lockers. Momo still had to make something for him. He pushed Shinso-kun to the side and started messing with the regulator to make it stronger. He thought they might need a little more punch. Shinso-kun looked at him strangely and said, so what do we do? Izuku smiled and turned his attention back to the crowd. We're observing our enemies. Nezu gave Aizawa his binoculars and said, this is a very interesting sight. Yamada was interested and asked, what do you mean? Eraserhead looked at the field and said, it looks like Genius Boy made a deal with Hatsume and Yaoyorozu to work together. It looks like they had this planned. Mike said with a big smile, oh, I see. That means they really are a team. Nezu gave a boy named Midoriya a nod and looked at the two of them. He saw two of them stay on the sidelines and point at another team every once in a while. He smiled, and it looked like the teen was already making plans. He saw that the inventor and his teammates from the last event could have done better, but it didn't look like they chose to. He didn't know what they were going to do next. Aizawa-san, are you up for the bet? Nezu asked with a big laugh and grin. The belts that Izuku asked Momo to make for him were checked. They were safe. They should have been, then. So, they wouldn't have to worry about splitting up while they were in the air. He was in the lead of their group and had a special board on his back, which was something his friend made. It had bars for one rider's palms and a footstool with straps for their feet. He had to keep his hands free because of his repulsors. Mei rode with them. Her quirk made it easy for her to find valuable headbands and let the others know about possible treats. She was the smallest of the group. Plus, it would be hard to steal their 320 points with her headset on. She had a stun gun that had been changed. The people on his right and left sides, Momo and Shinso-kun, wore Mei's hover boots. Thank goodness she made an extra pair, because when their friend gushed over them, it was so cute to see. They wore special handguns with cylinders on the outside of their arms. That stuff inside those balls felt like strong glue. Remember, we're going for taking candy from the baby strategy. We don't go after Todoroki's team and their 10 million, unless we can easily take it away, Izuku said with a steely voice. Mei was interested and asked, what about Blonde Jerk? He said in a harsh voice, avoid at all costs. He added with a hint of mischief, but if the Pomeranian comes and starts barking. This made the girl laugh. Shinso-kun pointed out, you must really hate that guy. Izuku chose not to say anything about it. When the game started, they moved slowly around the field looking for possible catches. Izuku saw a mixed-class hero team facing off any threats and doing a pretty good job of it. Todoroki was under attack, as he thought, and was hiding behind his ice fortress. That looked like the right choice until the ice turned into a goo. A lot of people came in, but their target got away by using a ramp that Todoroki made. Because of Iida-san's quirk, they were moving quickly. There's no doubt that Uraraka-san also did her part. Where was I now? Deku. That's what he said. When he turned around, he saw Bakugo, Kirishima, Ashido, and Shiro. They were quickly getting ahead of them. Shinso-kun said in a dry tone, I think that's the Pomeranian. Activate boots. We're running away. Catch any headband you manage, he told us. After a short time, he fired his repulsors and took off, staying close to the ground. He was having a hard time moving around, but he managed. The time I spent in the testing room was very helpful. They're still on us. Momo, catch headband from the guys that's riding Beast Boy, they asked Mei. Izuku laughed. He wanted to beat him very much. Blonde Menace didn't go after him in the first round, which caught him off guard. Firecracker would have to wait longer, which was bad news. Then he told Shinso-kun, fire behind you a few times. Make it look like you have bad aim. And he led them to another team that didn't think anything was wrong. Teen said in a rude voice, I won't have to act. He first heard the gun hiss, and then a lot of swear words. He stopped his team and turned around with his gloves. He looked right at Bakugo's angry face and smiled smugly. That made Pomeranian even more angry. Take this as a warning. If you come after us again, Festival will say goodbye. With that, he turned around and began running again. The hover boots batteries had to be saved for later. Momo was interested and worried at the same time. Izuku, why did you say that? He licked his lip. Should he tell her that he wanted to beat Bakugo awfully badly for what he did to the girl? He still held on to his anger. It fed him and made him think bad things about Firecracker. He was aware that he had just told Blonde to do something. That had to be done, though. He decided to do it later by saying, I will tell you later. With a light squeeze, Izuku felt Momo put her hand on his biceps. He turned his head toward her and gave her a small smile. He said, another team with an annoying blonde is closing in on us. Annoying blonde turned out to be Nato Monoma from 1B. Seriously, that guy had some problems. He began to talk endlessly about how great his class was, how much better they were, and how they would finally make 1A look bad. During his fake tears, he told them that he appreciated their hard work and respected them greatly, but he had to take off their headbands to make sure he could go to the next event. It took him 3 minutes to finish his speech. Shinso-kun asked with fake awe, wow, you're good at speeches, is that who you are? Monoma said, finally, before his body stopped moving. He praised them in a happy voice, throw your headbands to us and get off your horse, idiot. Izuku saw the blonde drop points just right into Mei's outstretched hands and use the palms of his teammates as springboards. He hit the ground very hard. The other boys in 1B were too shocked to understand what had happened. Thanks, Shinso. Mei shouted with joy. Momo sighed and said, yes, thank you. He was getting on my nerves. Izuku added, told you. Your quirk can end any standoff. Shinso-kun told them in a shy voice, "No problem." He asked, "Mei, how much do we have?" The point value would tell them what to do next. She quickly counted under her nose and said, "Give me a moment. 1,315. Shinso-kun asked with hope, "That should be enough, right?" He was breathing pretty hard. Momo replied with confidence, "Yes, there are only 2 minutes left." This sounded like a statement. "We're moving into defense, right Izuku? Unless something happens. For now we're changing our pace to march," he told me. He saw that almost every team was trying to get Todoroki's 10 million. After that, he saw 3 of them fly away, leaving Kaminari-san on the ground. Teen found a strange way to use it to send out a strong electric wave that shocked everyone nearby. The rest of the team came back after that and started running away from Bakugo's pack right away. But Izuku got close to something. The first place team wasn't moving as quickly as they had been. "Mei, does Uraraka-san look green?" he asked to make sure what he thought was true. The girl said, "Yeah, she's about to barf." Izuku rubbed his chin and thought about whether the gamble was a good idea. 10 million points are possible. Why try to draw attention away from them now? They'll definitely move forward anyway. They couldn't just walk in, though. They would be safe if they had some kind of cover. Hold on. With a small, sweet smile, he turned to his best friend and said, "Momo, can you make us some smoke grenades, please?" Nezu had to move around in his seat. The cavalry battle was a lot of fun. It was fun for him to watch the chaos on the field and let his teachers do most of the talking. The speed that young Iida gave young Todoroki's team a lot of attention. Teen probably only had to drag clothes because of young Uraraka. It was still Ryder who used his right side to build ice walls that kept his team safe. He sometimes froze the ground, which made it impossible for the students to get out. Finally, young Kaminari's quirk was the best way to stop huge threats in their tracks. They sometimes brought headbands with them, probably as a backup plan. The team with young Shiozaki as a rider was also very interesting. Young Tetsu, young Tokiyami, and young Aoyama were her horses. They were girls in the same class. A few people told him that 1B was mad at 1A for taking down the bad guys. He was scared that the problem could get worse, but seeing this team work together and score points gave him hope that things wouldn't get too bad. The chase that young Bakugo led against young Midoriya's team went well and there was no bloodshed, which was what he was afraid would happen. He laughed when he saw the inventor put the explosive teen in the dust with his repulsors and young Hatsume's hover boots. After that, they stuck them together, and he saw young Midoriya turn and say something. No matter what it was, young Bakugo's team left them alone to chase 10 million points. When it came to the genius boy and his team, they were smart and stole headbands from teams that were either too weak or too distracted to fight them. Sometimes they left glue on the field to make things harder for other people. They thought young Monoma's team was hilarious and made him check his work. He had to say that the strange thing about young Shinso would help the hero a lot. It was helpful to be able to talk your way out of any problem. Besides that, he seemed like a pretty smart young man. The boy's homeroom teacher told the teen that the boy wanted to be a hero. If he showed what he could do, he could definitely move on. Nezu was thinking when Yamada yelled into his microphone, "What's going on?" Smoke filled the area. "You can't see a thing?" As he looked down, he saw that more than half of the ring was filled with thick, black gas. Sure enough, young Midoriya's jetpack-powered team came out of it soon after, but the boy wasn't there. His mind quickly made sense of what was going on. He turned to Mike to tell him to stop talking, but Aizawa had already put his friend out of earshot with his scarf. Even so, Nezu didn't care about it. After a short wait, he looked back at the field. The young Midoriya then shot off into the sky to meet up with his team. Hatsume took something from his mouth and began to cheer. Nezu laughed as he looked at the scoreboard. "Look at that, people. With only 20 seconds left, Team Hatsume takes 10 million points for themselves, gaining indisputable first place. That's what you call a twist," Yamada said, which made the crowd go wild. There was an explosion, and young Bakugo shot up and flew very quickly toward young Midoriya. It hurt Nezu to feel this way. Things could go badly, but then something happened that he didn't expect. Inventor aimed his arm at the teen and fired a blast that pushed them away. Attack moved too quickly for young Bakugo to avoid, and it hit him and knocked him to the ground. His team caught him, which was good. Genius Boy protects his team victory, literally shooting down their competition. Who would have thought that he would be so set up on winning this with big prize? Nezu made a face. With that kind of fall, young Bakugo's life would be in danger, if not killed. He put on his glasses and looked at Midoriya. He had a scowl on his face and looked unhappy with how his action turned out. In an interested tone, he asked, Aizawa-san, young Yaoyorozu is pretty close to our inventors, right? From what I know, she eats lunch with them and visits them every day. Whenever the class talks about duo, she's the first one to join. Giving up her prim image, Eraserhead said in his usual tired voice. Things seemed to get worse between young Midoriya and young Bakugo, which they already had a bad relationship with. Without a doubt after what happened with young Yaoyorozu. At the very least, Nezu thought he knew how inventors' minds worked. He knew that Midoriya wasn't friends with anyone before UA because he doesn't have any quirks. And the teen's relationship sounded very close. He hoped his business partner wouldn't do anything too awful. By the way, you owe me 3,000 yen and a month of child support, Nezu told her happily. He was happy to hear Aizawa's groan and quiet curse. Mei couldn't take her eyes off the scoreboard. As planned, they passed the second round. She still couldn't believe they won first place, though. And it's all because Izuku came up with that crazy plan in his great mind. They used smoke to block their enemy's vision and went in with infrared goggles to steal the $10 million headband while they were in the air. She was scared, and her mind was full of what if scenarios. Then he shot up at them, grinning as he held his headband in his teeth. That was really cool. From what she remembered, that wasn't part of their plan. Did it make a difference? Not at all. The cherry on top was Izuku beating down the blonde jerk, who screamed bloody murder. Mei quickly turned around and gave Izuku and Momo a tight, happy hug. She felt them hug her, which made her smile bigger. Wait, there's something wrong. Someone, please fix that. When she turned around, Shinso was away. No, you don't. She called out, hey, Shinso. To get his attention. Come join us. It's a victory hug. He looked at them with a puzzled look on his face. What? He asked in shock. Mei is right. It was because of you that we were able to move forward by taking points away from Team Monoma, Momo said with a soft smile. He looked at the ground and scratched his head. He had a small smile on his face. Without it we wouldn't be able to go after 10 million, so in a sense, you are our hero, Izuku said happily. Teenager looked at them with wide open eyes and a jaw dropped. Both Mei and Momo nodded to agree with the statement. If they didn't already know they were going to win, they wouldn't go with that crazy plan. Shinso walked up to them shyly and let them pull him into the hug. Guy was really bad at making friends. Mei was sure that he would open up after spending more time with them. They laughed when Mei asked, so, who wants a lunch? I'm starving. She looked at Shinso and said, oh, and you. She started jumping up and down with joy and said, you're sitting with us. Friends stick together. Friends? He asked, not knowing what to say. She jumped up and down and said, yes, I'd like us to be friends, Shinso-san. Izuku laughed and put his hand on the teen's shoulder. Don't even try to fight it. We're all dead set on this. He looked at them and then blinked. Eventually, he laughed out loud. He smiled at them and said, if you say so, it was a happy one. Momo couldn't take her eyes off of Izuku's tablet, which had a picture of matchups on it. She was interested in some of them. In the same class as Mei and her friend Iida-san. He was by far the fastest in their class because of how strong he was and how he was built. So when he played Mei, she just hoped that her friend wouldn't make fun of him too much. It was between Ishido-chan and Kirishima-san. She wasn't sure how things would go here. Pink Girl was very quick, and her acid could keep her opponent at a distance. But Boy might be able to win if he could stand up to it and catch their classmate, but it wasn't likely. The first fight was between Izuku and Shinso-san, their new friend. Her mind went back to his file, especially the part about his psychological profile. Being looked down upon by others for things you can't change, she had a hard time understanding it. Why would someone do that? Shinso-san was kind of like Izuku in some ways. If you want to beat the teen, she knew the best thing to do was keep your mouth shut. But every time she looked at Green Inventor, he seemed to be thinking deeply. His face showed that he was on the edge of something. She only hoped that whatever he did would be good. A match was made for her with Tokiyami-san. She was ready for one of the tougher ones. She was stressed about her second fight. Bakugo was going to beat Tetsu no matter what. One of the hardest things in the tournament was blonde. A lot of times, Izuku brought it up. It made her believe him. It was still fresh in her mind that she ran with Bakugo as part of her exercise. She could feel someone grabbing her hands. She looked to her sides and saw Izuku and Mei smiling softly at her as if to tell her that everything would be okay. They always knew when she needed their comfort. It made her worry go away. She rubbed their hands with her thumbs. XXX Izuku was sure everything was going as planned. He was sure of it. He wasn't sure if he should kill Nezu or thank him. President Mike made an important announcement before his match. He said that the school wanted to show everyone something. It turned out to be his arc reactor. Nezu praised him for making it and said that it powered the school and a large part of their region. He told everyone that it was clean energy made by cold fusion, which was thought to be impossible to store. As soon as Izuku thought about it, his mailbox would be full of requests from businesses wanting to use this to power up their fabrics. That meant cash. A lot of money. He had already made a crazy amount of money with the school's reactor. Seriously, what 15-year-old made almost $500 million a week? That's about half of the money from the sale to Power Grid. He gave most of this money to charity, but he still had so much extra that he didn't know what to do with it. He shook his head. There was no time to worry about money. He needed to win the match. He only begged that his plan not work out. It's time, ladies and gentlemen. And to start things off, we give you the two guys WHO won the cavalry battle. They yelled over the crowd's cheers. The first one to go is a kid. WHO may be related to Eraserhead, due to his eye bags. Seriously dude, do you know what a sleep is? From General Department, Class 1C, Hitoshi Shinso. Izuku saw his new friend come out of the tunnel on the other side of the field and enter the ring. His shoulders were slouched and his hands were in the pockets of his pants, but he had a grim look on his face. He knew what was at stake and what the teen wanted to keep. And his opponent, the smartest kid in the school, honestly he should be teaching at the university right now. How his brain fits inside his skull, I have no idea. From Support Department, Class 1H, Izuku Midoriya. He got up from his passage. People cheered, but he didn't pay attention. He looked at Shinso-kun and gave him a nice smile. Midnight began. Since this is the first game, let me explain the rules. Her voice echoed through the stadium. You need to push your opponent out of bounds, make him unable to continue or surrender. Everything is allowed, but don't use tricks that are too dirty or I'll disqualify you. Same with doing a serious harm. I can end match at any moment, if I see that one of you can't go any longer. Is everything clear? They said yes. She hit the air with her whip and said, begin. A quick call from Izuku said, hey, Shinso-kun. How about we level the field? The teen asked as he opened his mouth to speak. I won't use my equipment and you won't brainwash me. Just good old fist fight. That way you can show that you're not your quirk, that you have some others' qualities and get into the hero course. What do you say? He really wanted it. He had the power to blast him away, but that would bother him. Shinso-kun was like him. People judged him by his genes, not what he did. Teen narrowed his eyes and looked at him with doubt. And what about your quirk? There it was, the plan. Did he use his oddity or not? It was impossible to tell. When Izuku turned on the brainwash, he scratched his cheek and set his body up so that his arm would hit it. He hoped that the stimulant would be strong enough to break the quirk. He gave a nervous laugh and a soft smile. In an honest voice, he said, I don't have one. Nothing. There was no action. His body wasn't limp, and his mind wasn't blank. Shinso-kun looked shocked at first, but then his face changed into one of understanding. His voice was quiet as he said, okay. He then got into fighting position. His body had a lot of loose spots. Izuku reached for the regulator and turned it off. He didn't want to use Repulsor's blast by accident. He rushed at his opponent and jabbed at him, taking the lead. Shinso-kun just barely avoided the punch and tried to shoot it. Izuku grabbed it and threw Teen over his shoulder, making him groan in pain. Boy kicked him badly from where he was lying down, but he quickly jumped back. That was an opportunity for Shinso-kun, so he jumped up. Teen rushed at him and punched and kicked him a few times. He was very clear about what he was going to do, which made it easy for Izuku to avoid or counter. But Shinso-kun didn't want to stop. He kept going even though his breath was short and his knuckles were red from hitting the metal gloves. Izuku liked and respected that. Oh, Shinso-kun was the same as him. People avoided both of them because they had dreams that seemed impossible to come true. No one thought they would do so well. They didn't agree, though. They took a step back and moved forward. Izuku hit his opponent with a straight punch, and then he followed it up with a roundhouse kick that knocked him out. Teen leaned back a bit, stood up, and looked at him. He was out of breath and asked, "He knows how to fight. Aren't you supposed to be some nerdy inventor?" Izuku smiled and let out a short laugh. "I am. There are other people who also want to be heroes." He turned his head to the side and asked, "So you want to join the hero class too?" "I'm interested," he asked. His answer, "No, I'm taking SNHQT," was full of happiness and confidence. Boy's mouth dropped open, his eyes grew wide, and he gasped for air. He vaguely remembered that Momo had the same reaction. "Are you crazy or what?" Shinso-kun yelled. That was all Izuku could say. He was willing to do anything to make his dream come true. Besides, his girlfriend was Mei Hatsume, the girl who could make anything explode. Maybe he had some loose screws. Since Izuku thought it was time to end the fight, he charged at Shinso-kun and easily grabbed him by the jacket. He then stomped his foot hard on the ground, spun around, and threw Shinso-kun out of the ring onto the grass. That guy was really light. Hitoshi Shinso is not allowed to be there, Midnight called. Izuku Midoriya moves forward. "Need a hand?" He didn't pay attention to the crowd's cheers and claps as he walked over to his friend. He asked, putting out his hand and smiling softly. Shinso-kun took it and sighed as he stood up. "I got my behind handed to me," he said in a dry tone. He was given a pat on the shoulder by Izuku. "If you want to change it, come by my lab. We can work out together." His answer was, "I might take you up on your offer." He then walked toward the tunnel. "Are you interested in watching the rest of festival at my classroom booth?" Izuku asked quickly. He wanted to learn more about his friend. He didn't mind Mei and Momo, but it was nice to have a guy to talk to. After giving his answer, Shinso-kun stopped for a moment, smiled briefly, and then walked into Izuku's passage. He was shocked to see Momo sitting next to Mei at his class booth. Both girls smiled at them and pointed to empty seats. He thanked his classmates, who praised him. As he sat down, he couldn't help but say to his hero course friend, "I thought you'd sit with your class." "I was, but they were a little too loud for me. Besides, Monoma would sometimes appear from behind the wall and start a fight with us," she honestly replied, sighing out loud. That made him nod. Guy was really bad to be around. Mike's voice cut them off in the middle of a small talk and made them look at the field. Denki Kaminari and Ochako Uraraka, two of Momo's classmates, were now fighting. He thought this match was pretty unfair. When Midnight said, "Start," the air around Kaminari-san sparkled and electricity shot out in all directions. Uraraka-san tried to avoid it by using her quirk on herself and jumping up a little, but she was still shocked. Fight ended right away. Everything Kaminari-san wastes energy on is something that could be used to better control his quirk. "Mei." He turned to his girlfriend and smiled big. "I have an idea for a great baby." It was clear to everyone else that they were off talking about ideas while making babies. Making babies was too important to them, and the fact that this idea could be used for his suit made it even more important. "Mei, aren't you the next one?" Momo's voice and laugh took them away from the inventor's talk. "Am I?" she asked, blinking. "Oh, yes I am. Against that strange, fast guy with glasses, right?" She cocked her head. "Hi, Iida." He smiled and said, "Just don't let him get close, and you'll be fine." He, his friends, and his classmates wished the girl luck. Izuku wanted to kiss her, but he didn't feel comfortable showing so much affection in public. "Pooh? What?" Shinso-kun asked in a weak, uncertain voice. She looked at him with understanding and said, "Don't worry, you'll get used to it. That's how they call their inventions." "Is there a way to end this friendship?" Teen asked with hope. They laughed at him and his sad sigh, Izuku and Momo. Mei checked on her babies one more time. The jetpack was ready to go. The hover boots were ready to rock. The glue guns were safe on her forearm. The stun gun was on her utility belt, and a few cylinders with markings were on top of it. She was ready to go. Present Mike yelled their introductions and called her a wild hurricane of madness. She wasn't crazy. Other people just couldn't understand how her mind worked. Izuku and Momo were the only ones who could keep up with her crazy ideas. Maybe Shinso could too. She remembered the look he gave them when she called him their friend. Mei really thought that he needed some people who would accept him. Plus, that was another person who could praise her and Izuku's babies. No time for mushy things right now, as she had a match to win. It was about time she could use her babies and show everyone how great they are. When Midnight told them to start, her hover boots came to life right away. The guy made of glass was moving really quickly. He was almost right in front of her in an instant. She did the only thing she could think of and turned on the jetpack. She shot into the sky and used the fans in her hover boots to help her find Speedy. She then used glue guns to shoot him, but he was able to avoid them easily. Mei creased her brows. It was time to use another baby. She put on a gas mask, grabbed a cylinder with a pink belt, shook it, and threw it on the ring. Pink gas poured out of the container and covered the field. Weird Guy tried to avoid it and even took a deep breath. She remembered what Izuku and Momo taught her and dove down to get closer. She wasn't a good fighter, but she didn't need to hit him because moving used up more oxygen, so she just stayed out of his way and shot him with her glue guns. Soon Speedy had to take a breath and swallow some of the gas. He started to feel sleepy and swayed side to side almost right away. It looks like the sleeping gas worked faster than they thought. Maybe they should check in later. She walked toward her opponent as she fell to the ground. He tried hard to stay awake, but all she did was push him, making him fall. It's not possible for Tenya Iida to go on. Mei Hatsume moves forward. Midnight rang. She smiled. The babies had worked. She zoomed in on the area where support companies had their reps and heard them talking. They were interested in her and Izuku's cute babies, which was great. She hoped they got great internship offers. She got up on her jetpack and steered it toward her class booth. Once she landed and took the babies off, she sat down in the best seats in the stadium, on Izuku and Momo's laps. They laughed and petted her head. Is this something else I need to get used to? Shinso asked. Why does he sound so sad? She didn't know why she joined her boyfriend and friend in laughing, but she did. Shinso just groaned loudly. Nezu was very interested in how students fought, what strategies they used, and how they used their quirks. It was all so interesting. And thanks to Alan, who sent every possible conversation through Midnight's earpiece, they could learn even more. A little surprise came up when he told young Shinso that he didn't have any quirks, and when he brought up SNHQT near the end. Why did he say that? That would be a puzzle for later, but he would figure it out. It was instant victory for young Todoroki over young Aoyama. He knew the boy was strong, but this was a bit much for a first-year student. Endeavor must have trained him hard. He frowned a little, hoping it wasn't too hard. It was just a sliver of hope, but he had to have faith in something. Nezu quietly laughed at the answer young Shiozaki gave to Mike's introduction. He had heard about her religious beliefs and desire to live in peace. While he admired this, he knew that girl would have to make a choice if she wanted to become a hero. Fighting was a part of the job, but she was good at capturing targets. Young Siro tried to get an easy win by shooting out his tape and pulling young Shiozaki out of bounds, but the girl just used her vines to her bindings. Her vines grabbed the teen and gently took him outside the ring. Ashido and Kirishima looked like they were dancing. The girl took off her shoes and used her acid to glide across the field, making circles around the boy, who tried but failed to catch her. Midnight broke up the fight when Kirishima could no longer hold his quirk and lost the protection it gave him from the acid Ashido threw at him. The next match was between young Tetsu and young Bakugo. As Nezu had guessed, it was pretty bloody. Blonde student kept attacking the metallized teen with explosion after explosion, but the teen didn't back down and attacked back. He had to turn down the volume because it was so loud, but young Bakugo's bad language could still be heard. The sessions with Hound Dog were for nothing. The fight ended with Blonde using a giant explosion on young Tetsu and sending his opponent flying into the wall with a hard crash. Young Bakugo looked happy with himself, which didn't sit well with Nezu. Before going back, Blonde looked at the 1H booth with his usual scowl. Nezu was excited to tell Aizawa. It's time for your problem child to fight. This made the man growl. She considered using creation to get some ice to cool off her red face. Why did May have to kiss her on the cheek and wish her luck? It seemed normal, but it also didn't. Why was her heart beating so fast? Why did she have butterflies in her stomach? And why was she grinning like a fool? Was that a happy squeal she let out? It was normal for female friends to plan to kiss on each other's checks. It was normal for May because she was touchy, cute, smart, had a weird sense of humor that made her laugh, and was a beautiful girl. She hated her mind. And would her face finally stop blushing? People, get ready for the last match of the first round. Those two will fight. The Dark Lord, the Destroying Rawen, and the ugly kid in this tournament. Hello, Fumikage Tokiyami. I'm from Hero Class 1A. Versus this student WHO is recommended and can make things at her whim. She can do anything. I am Momo Yaoyorozu, the president of Class 1A. As soon as she got the hang of things, she walked out of the tunnel and stopped next to her opponent. She gave him a short bow and silently wished them luck in their fight. Tokiyami-san replied with a simple nod, keeping his eyes on her. Dark Shadow was already out and speeding toward her before Midnight even asked the fight to begin, but she was ready. The teen was surprised when Momo ran straight at her, but she slid under the creature just in time to avoid being hit. She quickly stood up and kept running, then looked back to see that Dark Shadow was shooting at her. She pulled her jacket up and used creation to make 2 flash bangs without the pins from her back. Grenades went off and the beast screamed. She looked straight at Tokiyami-san, who had a scowl on his face. Momo learned his biggest flaw, which made Izuku scowl. He was totally dependent on quirks. Thinking about it, Tokiyami-san always had trouble in no-quirk sparring sessions and often lost. Momo attacked and pushed him toward the end of the ring. Boy had a hard time dealing with her because he was moving so slowly compared to Izuku. She hit him a few times and blocked any others he tried to throw, desperately trying to get away from her. You're wide open, Dark Shadow screamed behind her. As she squatted down and smiled, a huge claw flew over her head. She made more flash bangs, which made the thing roar in pain and hide inside Tokiyami-san. By sweeping her opponent's legs, she made him fall on his back. She then jumped at him, pinned him down, and got ready to attack. The look of shock on her classmate's face made her smile. Give up, she suggested with hope. Heaved a sigh, Tokiyami-san said, the victory is yours. People cheered when Midnight told her she won. She got up and helped him stand up. You know what? Yaoyorozu-san, I thought you were better than you were. I thought Dark Shadow would be able to beat you easily. You've really gotten better lately, he said, then turned around and left. She blinked at what he said. Did she? Flash creation was a big help, and her sparring sessions with Izuku were also helpful. She knew what to do and didn't do, could punch or kick well, and could keep up with people faster than she could. But was it that noticeable? As soon as she got back to the booth, May gave her a big hug, which she gladly returned. She looked up and saw Shinso-san nod shyly at her. She hoped that he would eventually open up to them. Where is Izuku? She asked when she saw that he wasn't there. May, who was sitting on Momo's lap, said, oh, after you won, he ran back to the lab to suit up. Momo liked that and started to pet her friend's hair. Put on your suit? Is that interesting? Shinso-san asked. They gave each other a sly smile and said, that's a secret. Welcome back from your break. We don't need to wait any longer. Let's go straight to the second round of the tournament. To the right is the boy from Class 1A who can give you free shock therapy. His name is Denki Kaminari. The smart kid on the left showed us that he doesn't need his toys to hit someone in the behind. Izuku Midoriya, you are the class president of 1H. The crowd went crazy when President Mike's voice rang through the stadium. Izuku took a deep breath and laughed a little at the intros. This was it. He was going to show everyone how he became a hero, which would keep them safe in the future. He walked out of the passageway into the light. He could fly there, but he wanted to save that for the big entrance with Mark II, if Alan could finish fixing bugs and making sure it worked. He and May were almost done with that yesterday. As he zipped into the area where the company reps were talking and taking pictures, he saw his opponent looking at him with wide eyes and an open mouth. It gave him a strange sense of accomplishment, which made him feel good, so he let it wash over him. He wasn't looking for attention, but it was nice. What is it? Some kind of costume was worn by Midoriya. Amadria? Is that you? Midnight was shocked and asked. He smiled big and snapped his faceplate open. Sure is, sensei. Holy cow, wow, this is really cool, Kaminari-san yelled with joy. Thank you. He gave a big smile. He said with a cocky grin, but sorry, dude, you're about to lose. Lightning cracked around him. Izuku just smiled and put his face mask back on. He was ready for it. When Midnight started the match, Kaminari-san hit him with a huge wave of electricity. Normally, that would have knocked him out or paralyzed him, but because he had drained the arc reactor and supercapacitors before the fight, it only tingled him a little and caused the screen to glitch. Alan showed him the exact number on his screen and said, "Power capacity is at nearly 300%, sir." Wow, that was interesting. This arc reactor wasn't brand new, and during the sports festival, it only worked 43% of the time. It's hard to believe that a teenager could make that much power. How about that? Izuku said with a smug tone. He seemed to have used his quirk a bit too much, which made Kaminari-san look at him blankly. This was because he was too dependent on his quirk. The teen was sent out of bonds in about a second by a double blast from his hand repulsors. Izuku took a deep breath and looked over at his opponent, who was lying on the grass with some burns on his jacket. He wasn't sure if the powering system would go crazy with all that extra energy. That was the choice he made. He didn't want to be asked a lot of geeky questions by his classmates or have to sit in the sun in his suit. Today, cocked Midoriya wasn't on the menu. Alan, please inform Mei, Momo and Shinso-kun that I'll be in class locker. Of course, sir. Do you want something to drink? Tea? Coffee? Ai replied with his usual slyness. He happily said, "Tea, please." He turned a corner and almost ran into someone. When he looked up, he saw Endeavor with his red, spiky hair, narrowed, cyan eyes, and flaming beard. Izuku scowled deeply. He didn't like Endeavor. Sure, the man was Japan's #2 hero, but his attitude and tense air made him completely unlikable. After reading countless damage reports and blogs about his fights, he was sure to say that Endeavor was his #1 disliked hero. He said, "Boy," in a stern, superior voice. "I have to say, I am impressed with how smart you are and how well you can make plans. You must be very smart to have thought of this, arc reactor, and that power suit." Could he have just praised Izuku? If so, why did he make it sound like his inventions were nothing special? Seriously, how rude could a person be? Izuku spoke in a calm voice and said, "Thank you, sir." He hoped Endeavor would leave him alone. "Your next fight is going to be with my Shoto. I think you should give up, even though your device is cool. My son doesn't have time to play with the toys." The hero spoke in a way that left no room for debate. He has a duty to surpass all might. Does that trash can that was on fire just call his life's work a toy? Izuku really wanted to use his last bit of power to blast that jerk with his repulsors. He still has to fight Mei. "I tried not to sound too angry," she replied. "She's not easy to get along with." He laughed and shook his head. "That girl is going to lose. Don't make a fool of yourself too much when you face my Shoto. Enjoy the rest of the festival." The hero then turned and walked away. Still on his journey, Izuku was furious. How could one of the greatest heroes be so cocky? Did that man think he was king of the world because he was genetically lucky? Endeavor was a jerk with a huge ego, just like Bakugo. The man shook his head. Those words would not affect him. He knew what he was worth and what he could do and store. When he opened the doors, he saw Momo and Shinso-kun helping Mei strap her gear down. Her jetpack and hover boots were already on, but the glue guns were gone because they wouldn't work against Todoroki-san. In their place was something they called a sound rifle, which was a speaker connected to amplifiers and an oscillator. It was powered by the cord that went from the speaker to the arc reactor in her jetpack. It was pretty big, taking up most of Mei's arm, but luckily the version for his suit was smaller. He saw that she still had some cylinders and a stun gun. "Good fight." That's what Mei said with her usual wide smile. "Thank you. Are you ready to beat Icy Boy?" he asked as he took off his mask. "Okay. Hope that our present Mike 2.0 will work against him," she said as she played with the dial. He agreed with her hope and nodded. Izuku saw Shinso-kun admiring Mark 1 and that made him smile. "Do you like it? What's up?" he asked, waking up his friend. Teen scratched behind his head and blinked at him. "Yeah, it's impressive," he said. Momo stood up straight and smiled big. "All done, May. How about we walk you to the tunnel?" "Sure, why not? Yes, you can watch the game from there," she said happily. And as they walked, Izuku saw May using her quirk the whole time and not participating in the conversation. This was very unusual for his girlfriend. Was she nervous? They saw Todoroki-san bring out a huge glacier in a matter of seconds. He knew that, but reading about it and seeing it were two very different things. "May, how are you?" he asked with worry. He saw a strange look on her face that he usually saw when she was focused on making babies. She hummed and blinked at him. "Does something that might help a little." "Just what?" Momo asked, showing that she was interested. "I'm not sure, but it has something to do with my quirk. In the evening, you two can figure it out," she said with a small smile. As May stood in front of her opponent, waiting for the match to begin, Todo-something kept looking at her without much interest. Was he not interested at all? That would be rude. How could someone not be even slightly excited to see her in Izuku's genius? Their cute babies were too cute not to admire. Oh, midnight was about to start the fight. She remembered the advice Izuku and Momo had given her. The word, "begin," had barely been spoken when a wave of ice hit her. She took to the skies with her jetpack, making it much harder for the ice to turn her into an icicle. Putting on a gas mask, she dropped 2 cylinders marked with orange. They contained a rather unpleasant form of pepper gas, but Lollipop Guy quickly froze them. She pouted because she liked those babies and didn't like how cold he was being to them. Her opponent sent up ice pillars to try to hit her, but she was able to easily avoid them because of her strange ability to concentrate. Then an ice spike from one of the pillars shot right in front of her, and then a dozen more. Did this guy try to turn her into a shish kebab? As she flew higher, she pressed a button on PM 2.0 and pointed it downward. Baby started sending sound waves very quickly, but the ice structure stayed put. She touched the dial and slowly turned it up. Finally, the pillars started to crack and soon broke apart into pieces. It worked, better than during test runs, but it was loud. Even with soundproof plugs in, she could hear it. The other player was on his knees with his eyes closed, mouth open, and hands over his ears. He looked like he was in a lot of pain. May pushed the button again to turn off the power and looked at the field. The ice pillars had turned into dust, and the concrete seemed to have some cracks in some places. She looked at Lollipop Guy and saw blood coming out of his ears, and then he threw up. Okay, PM 2.0 was working too well. They would have to make some changes or give everyone in Japan headphones that block out noise. She lowered her height and hovered above the ground. Todo got up and gave her an angry look, telling her to stop because this baby was still in the testing phase. He looked like he still wanted to fight, and May did too. She usually just left the ring and went to work on her cute babies in the lab, but Izuku and Momo were watching her. They both wanted to win, so how could she not? They had promised to meet in the finals, so if she won, she would have to fight Izuku, which made her feel strangely excited. She decided she wanted to win, so she grabbed the stun gun. Lollipop Guy sent her another ice wave, but she hit it with her boots and avoided it. She charged forward, getting far enough away to shoot Todo with her cute baby. He fell to the ground, writhing in pain and screaming. When May looked at Midnight, who was about to call the fight off, the temperature dropped. When she looked at her opponent, she only saw a huge wave of ice coming at her. It was so cold that she felt like someone threw her right into an icy bathtub. She couldn't move or breathe, and all she could hear was her heart beating and blood rushing through her veins. Her lungs were burning, and she needed to take a breath. Soon, everything went black. She finally got a big breath of fresh, cold air when the ice in front of her broke. She coughed. Her throat felt strangely dry. Her vision was blurry, but May was sure she saw Izuku's armored glove and his head with those softly glowing green eyes. She heard a noise that sounded like his voice. Was he calling her? Or was it someone else? Soon, more ice was taken away, and she felt herself fall forward. Her body was so damn heavy. Someone caught her, and Izuku's helmet was right next to her. Some of the weight off of her right arm and back went away. Then, something nice and warm touched her and wrapped itself around her. Her chest was giving off heat, which made her want to squeeze it closer because she was tired. She could feel her body moving, but she couldn't stop it. She looked around and saw the walls and lights on the ceiling. Momo and Shinso were also there, but their faces showed that they were worried. She wanted to call them, but her voice wouldn't come out. She closed her eyes and fell asleep without having any dreams. She was scared. How could she not be? Her best female friend was fighting the boy who was the most powerful person in her class, and he tried to stab Mei. Momo was impressed by the sound rifle. It had to be very strong to turn that much ice into dust and break through concrete. Besides seeing Todoroki-san's hurt face, she was sure that device could be very good at capturing and disabling people. She didn't want to be on the other side of this baby. It seemed like a good idea to beat Todoroki-san with just a stun gun. He probably already had hurt ears, and from where she was standing, Mei's rifle would hit a crowd member directly. She was sure that Mei had won, and so were Izuku and Shinso-san. They were getting ready to celebrate when she saw Todoroki-san slap his right hand on the ground. Soon, a huge chunk of ice flew at her friend and buried her. Her mind and heart both stopped. Mei, Izuku screamed and ran straight at the glacier. She ran with Shinso-san right behind her. She barely heard Midnight call the fight. She watched as Izuku broke the ice piece by piece with his hand repulsors, but it was moving too slowly. Mei would die of lack of oxygen at this speed. "Hi Todoroki-san. Use your fire," she told the teen who was lying down. "Mei needs to be let go," she begged very loudly. He looked at her with glassy eyes and asked, "What?" "She told you to light your fire. Fix it right away," she screamed and pointed at the chunk of ice. I can't," Todoroki-san said in a weak voice as he looked down. What did he mean when he said, "He can't"? Her friend could die, and he wouldn't help save her. What was the point of being in hero class if you wouldn't do what a hero should do? He was shocked and his ears were popped, but he could still use his quirk. Izuku quickly called out, "Alan, all power to the chest piece." She looked at him and saw a huge beam come out from where the arc reactor was. The beam quickly broke through the ice. "Shinso, keep looking for Mei. I don't want to hurt her by accident. Please make her something hot. She's definitely going to be cold," he told them quickly. If people looked at her, she didn't care. She opened her jacket and started making a couple of blankets and a hot pack wrapped in cloth. "I see her." It was Shinso-san calling. Izuku put down his beam and ran forward. He shoved the last pieces away with his hands. With a deep breath, Mei coughed as her face came into view. Her eyes were hazy and her face was a sickly gray blue. When her friends finally dug her out, she fell forward and Izuku caught her and held her close. "Take off your jetpack," he told Shinso-san as he worked to remove the sound rifle. Momo kept a close eye on her friend, who was shivering badly and breathing quickly. As soon as the equipment hit the ground, Momo walked over to Mei, opened her jacket, and put the hot pack on her chest. They then quickly wrapped her in blankets. They followed Izuku as he ran into the tunnel with Mei in his arms. They tried to call their friend, but she didn't answer. Momo and the others were worried, and Girl's eyes closed eventually. When she saw Recovery Girl's office, she ran to open the door quickly because she had a feeling that Izuku would just force them open. Heroine pointed to the bed, and when Mei was put down, she told them to back off and let her work. They had to wait in agony while Recovery Girl checked on their friend. Mei woke up during this time, but it looked like she didn't know where she was or what was going on. Heroine gave Girl a warm drink, but she only took a sip before coughing violently. Finally, an oxygen mask and catheter bag were given to her. Recovery Girl told them, "She's stable." Everyone let out a breath and relaxed. "She needs to rest up. You can stay, but don't make noise so she doesn't wake up." They went to the bed and pulled the curtain shut. Momo sat down on the bed and started to pet Mei's hair. Girl responded by snuggling closer to her hand in her sleep. Izuku leaned against the wall and massaged his face. He kept his eyes on their friend's face. She looked over at Shinso-san, who was fidgeting on the other side of the bed. He saw her looking at him and turned his head away. He shyly said, "Sorry. I've never had any friends. I don't really know what to do." He sounded a little mad at himself. Him too? Was it a curse or something that none of them had anyone their age around them before UA? She gave him a nice smile and said in a soft voice, "Just being here really shows that you care." They stayed here and watched the girl sleep. In the middle of that, Recovery Girl came in with a new uniform and asked Momo to help her change May. The boys went outside to help. She was still cold, but she didn't look as sick as she did before. Izuku broke the silence with a cold voice and said, "I'm going to make Todoroki regret it." While Momo looked at him, he kept his eyes on May's face. But his eyes were shining, like a fire of anger behind them. "Dude, I don't mean any harm, but that guy can make glaciers melt like mushrooms after it rains. I agree that your suit is cool, but do you have any freedom?" Shinso-san asked in shock. That was the only funny thing Izuku could do. His laugh was both hollow and scary, and it made her shiver. She had never seen him laugh like that before. He then turned to them and smiled. He just said, "You haven't seen me do a shit yet." "Yaoyorozu-san, your match is about to start." Alan told her through her glasses, "Please go to Tunnel B." Izuku looked at her with a softer face and a small smile on his lips. "Go. We'll keep an eye out for her." "Okay. May wouldn't want you to give up the match," Shinso-san said with a shy look at her. "At least I think that." She took off her glasses and said, "Okay." She didn't want to, but she did. Mother leaned in and kissed Girl on the forehead before she left. She felt like this was the right thing to do and was sure May would do the same thing to her. She snarled at Todoroki-san as she walked out of the drape and saw him on the bed. He looked at her with his usual blank look. Did he even care that her friend might die? Based on how he behaved in class, she didn't think so. It was wrong to think of him that way, but her friends were too important to her. The crowd cheered for Present Mike's introductions, but she didn't care about them now because her opponent was Bakugo, a dangerous foe that Izuku had told them about many times. His file was the most developed in the database, probably because he knew the blonde. She looked for chemicals that could neutralize the nitroglycerin that he had in his sweat. Sodium hydroxide was one option, but it could easily hurt or kill the teen, so she tried a different approach. Momo looked at Bakugo. He was already set up to shoot forward and end the fight quickly. He kept his angry eyes on her, scowling even more than usual. She cleared her mind and focused on the other person. She was good at it. Midnight said the fight would start, and Bakugo shot at her. She quickly made goggles and a mask to protect her nose and eyes. Then she pulled out a silver cylinder and threw it at the teen. He did what she expected him to do, which was blow it up. At that moment, a white powder covering his whole arm appeared. It was dextrose. Momo used this to his advantage by making 3 grenades full of it and throwing them forward. Bakugo quickly turned white and coughed very hard. As she ran at him, she forged a metal staff and jumped up to drop it. He raised his hand to set off an explosion, but nothing happened. The look of pure confusion on his face made her very happy. Her weapon hit him in the shoulder, making him grunt in pain. He tried to get close, but she pushed him away with her staff. Izuku taught her how to use her ranged advantage, so she wasn't going to give it up. He kept attacking her with his fists and legs, growling and swearing all the time. Bakugo was like a wild animal with rabies. She stepped to the side to avoid his hook and hit him on the back of the knee, which made him lose his balance. Momo kicked him in the jaw, which knocked him out, and she hit him hard in the stomach with her pole. She was going to win this. "Give up," she told him, putting one end of her staff to his throat. He looked at her with angry eyes and a twisted face. He growled loudly and hit her with her stick and tried to kick her, but she jumped back just in time. Bakugo stood up, and a single, small explosion went off on his right hand. Compared to what he usually does, this was like sparklers. He ran at her, and when Momo threw herself at him, he closed the gap by jumping at her. She stopped him by making a metal beam out of her stomach, but Bakugo still grabbed her arm firmly. He turned around and jerked Blonde along. When Blonde let go of his hold, she fell forward, but before she could right herself, he kicked her, knocking her off balance. She screamed in pain as she fell to the ground in an awkward position. Suddenly, her head was grabbed roughly and hit the concrete. Her mind went fuzzy and her vision blurred. A fist hit her cheek, and she saw Bakugo standing over her with a mean grin, ready to attack again. She raised her good arm to protect herself, but he swung it down and made an explosion. It wasn't very strong, but it was enough to move her hand away. He then kicked her in the temple. When she made a flash bang without a pin, Bakugo backed off. She stood up, but her legs were shaking. She had to do something because Blonde was already charging at her. Momo made a bunch of glass balls from her stomach, which fell all over the ground. Her opponent just jumped up and used his ability to cut the distance. He fell on her, pinning her to the concrete. The impact hurt her back, and before she could do anything, he hit her over and over with his fist. The pain made her lose consciousness. "You thought you could win by putting that white crap on me? Extra, don't think that way," he yelled at her. "Enough." The voice of Midnight reached her. The fight was over, but he wouldn't stop punching her in the face. Midnight and Cementos had to work hard to drag him away, and then the beating stopped. She could hardly keep her eyes open. Heroine went to check on her and told her, "Med bots are coming, Yaoyorozu." "Hey, you extra." Bakugo texted her. "Tell Deku that if he doesn't lose to the fucking icy hot, he's getting even worse treatment." Her world went dark after she heard those words. Inko sat comfortably on the couch. She was at the Bakugo's residence, waiting for sports festival to begin to watch her son perform. Normally she would do it at home, but Mitsuki invited her over. She was a bit surprised by that. After college their only contact was during parent-teacher meetings at schools. Nonetheless she accepted. After a mass of commercials and commentary to hype people, the thing finally begun. She watched the class coming in, waiting for her son to appear. Now from the support department, Class 1H, and leading them into the field is no other than a student WHO should teach at the university. Trust me when I say that his nickname, Genius Boy, is well deserved. There was her adorable son, singled out and embarrassed in front of the whole world. She couldn't help but laugh at the silly, but suiting nickname. "Izuku is already famous there?" Masaru asked in awe. "Wow, you're lucky, Inko," Mitsuki said, grinning at her. She just politely nodded at them. Then came Katsuki's athlete oath. She blinked, absolutely not understanding why Mitsuki laughed at it and cheered. Masaru just shook his head. Seems like Katsuki was still loud and throwing challenges left and right, but did he have to be so disrespectful? Obstacle race begun and here they are. Inko looked at screen with great interest, when camera showed her baby boy along with two girls. Izuku told her about his female friends. She vaguely recognized Momo, from her visits in the comic book shop. Those girls were really pretty, scratch that. They were beautiful. Almost every day Izuku told her about something they did together and such. She really hoped that one of them would catch her son's eye. She wanted grandbabies in the future. Do you see it, people? I don't know how that happened, but let me say you this, only Genius Boy could do something like that. She snapped out of her fantasy. Why her baby boy was riding on that monstrosity, and why her potential daughters-in-law were doing it with him. But they looked like they had fun. She will let it slide just this once. Oh wow. Your son have some balls to do that, Inko, Mitsuki shouted in excitement. Yes, he does. She simply answered. Camera showed the last obstacle, the minefield. She had mixed feeling about it. Go get him, brat. Take that first place. Mitsuki shouted, when Katsuki was showed on the screen. He was fighting with a boy that had some kind of ice quirk. Then explosion happened and pink smoke filled the field. She wondered what could happen, and just like that the feed showed her Izuku with outstretched hand and still glowing repulsor. She remembered, when her son told her about his success in making Arc Reactor an Iron Man suit. She was so overjoyed. Her baby boy's dream was closer than ever. She remembered the long hours Izuku spent reading about machinery, electricity, studying periodic table, filling out his notebooks with ideas and theories. It all paid off. She was really proud of her son. Damn it. Mitsuki screamed in anger, when Katsuki was declared second, making her and Masaru cringe at the volume of her voice. She was glad when her son came back on the stadium, sharing the place with his friends. The suggestion of them being a power team really pleased her. Huh, would you look at that? Little Izuku is surrounding himself with girls. Who would have known? Mitsuki said in her teasing voice. You're so lucky, Inko. You at least have a chance to be a grandma. Not like me with that brat of mine. She chuckled slightly. I hope so. Izuku told me about those two young ladies. They're close friends. That's good. I remember Izuku being a loner in middle school. Maybe even before that. Masaru commented, smiling softly at her. Cavalry battle started and there was her son with his female friends and unfamiliar boy. Most of the event focused on Team Todoroki and them defending their 10 million, but from time to time she saw Izuku and his team running around the field and snatching points from unsuspecting squads. When scoreboard showed up, she was glad to see them placed fourth. It meant they would pass to the next event. But she could help but cringe a little at the brutality Katsuki displayed. Mitsuki was really enjoying it, but Masaru had a little frown. At least he wasn't blind to his son's violent behavior. What's going on? Smoke filled the area. You can't see a thing. The top-down perspective was shown and most of the field was covered in thick, black gas. Soon Izuku's teammates launched into the skies, but her baby boy was nowhere to be seen. After few more seconds of wait, her son shot up and stopped near his squad. Mei took something from him and they all cheered. Look at that, people. With only 20 seconds left, Team Hatsume takes 10 million points for themselves, gaining indisputable first place. That's what you call a twist. Her baby boy swooped first place. She was glad for him and his team. Then Katsuki launched himself up, straight at her son, but Izuku just blasted him of the skies. Something was wrong. Her mother instincts were tingling. Her baby boy could easily dodge it, but he chose to shot another person. From that height Katsuki could be easily harmed. Maybe even killed. Damn it, second again. Mitsuki huffed. Congratulations, Inko. Masaru told her, smiling a bit. Thank you. I'm sure Izuku and his team are also overjoyed, she replied, smiling back. As if on cue, her baby boy was shown, hugging with girls, soon to be joined by their other teammate. Her son was close to those girls. Like really close. Her chances of being a grandma skyrocketed. Now is the tournament, right? Masaru asked in wonder. Yes. It's always on the third event, Inko informed, nodding slowly. Finally. Some good ass-kicking is going to happen. Mitsuki cheered, visibly pumped up. Before the tournament begun, there was a special commercial, showing Big Arc Reactor. It looked similar to the one in the Iron Man movie from pre-Quirk era. The one who developed this device is none other than our first-year student, Izuku Midoriya. With his consent, school built the bigger version, that powers our facilities. All the access energy is sold to the city grid. I'm not allowed to disclose the information about its performance, but let me to tell you this. Arc Reactor is giving power to the bigger part of our region. Device is completely eco-friendly. Its energy is clean, produced by a cold fusion reaction. The principal said, during the video. She heard choking noises. Looking at her friend, she witnessed them with their jaws slack open. Her heart swelled in pride. Inko, is it true? Masaru asked in weak voice. Yes. Izuku dedicated most of his life to make this possible, she informed. Holy crap. I knew he was smart, but damna, Mitsuki said in awe. Does he get something from it? Yes, but I don't know the exact number. Lie. She knew very well. His account was supervised by her. Her son earned many times more money in a week than she did during whole year, and her job was good. Her baby boy was first, fighting against the boy from his team. His introduction made her chuckle a bit. She knew Izuku could easily blast the teen away, but they fought in old-fashioned way. Would you look at that? Genius boy not only knows how to build, his fighting skill are also one to be admired. I didn't know that Izuku knows how to fight. His moves are very good. Masaru commented in slight awe. Izuku has green belt in Oyama Karate, she answered proudly. Her baby boy was able to handle himself. Mitsuki snorted with laughter. Green? Does he have some kind of fetish for this color? Not really. Only his room and accessories are green, she replied, making them all laugh. Her baby boy won. She hoped that he would bring out his suit soon. She wanted to finally see it. She enjoyed Mei's fight. Girl was clever and knew what to do to keep herself safe. Izuku extolled her many times, mostly girls' intellect and building skills. She had a good laugh when he told her about their babies. They all gaped at the huge glacier that Todoroki made. Inko hoped that her son would have to go against him. Katsuki's match was too violent for her. She was reminded of those angry dogs that wanted to attack you for no reason at all. She peeked at her friends. Masaru was rooting silently, but he had a small frown marring his features. Mitsuki cheered loudly, screaming at her son to blast that kid away, and that he did. She was worried slightly for the boy's safety, seeing him stuck into the wall. She was impressed with Momo's fighting skills and quick thinking. Izuku told her that he was helping her to learn how to fight better. Girl knew how to handle herself. Second round rolled in after a break, and there he was. Oh, it was so similar to movie version of Mark II. She hoped that it functioned good. It had to be. Otherwise Izuku wouldn't be so proud of it. That's Izuku, Mitsuki shouted, completely astonished. Inko just nodded happily. She wished that Stan could see it, they owed him so much. The match was short and she couldn't help but compare it to the scene from the first Avengers movie. It was exactly like that. A lightning hitting her son, him just shrugging it off and blasting his opponent away. She briefly wondered if the power reading was the same. Once again she was impressed with Mei and her abilities. The girl navigated in the air with a strange grace, dodging the ice pillars popping out from the ground. But then she feared for her potential daughter-in-law's health. Why did that boy try to skewer her? Didn't he know that it could kill her? Fortunately Mei raised up and used that strange device on her arm. They only heard a bit, before it was muted, but it was so loud. She pitied people on the stadium. She was so sure of the girl's victory. She played this perfectly, and when she shot Todoroki with her stun gun, she thought that the match was over. But then the massive amount of ice rushed at Mei and buried her. She gasped, terrified for the girl's life. Fortunately her son and his friends rushed to her rescue, digging her out and taking away, most likely to the infirmary. She released the breath she was holding, but still wished that Mei was alright. But something didn't sit right with her. There was so many heroes there, even Endeavor was present, and none of them moved an inch to help. She questioned their behavior. Next match was normal and without any kind of moment that made her fear for participants' life. She was glad that the girl from 1B didn't suffer due to acid. Her hair, despite being vines, were really beautiful in their strange way. Last match of the second round. Momo versus Katsuki. She silently wished for her potential daughter-in-law to win this. Come on brat. Just blast her away, Mitsuki screamed, annoyed that her son's opponent was winning it. Maybe that white stuff is messing with his quirk, Masaru suggested, stroking his chin. Inko cheered for Momo. Girl really gave her all. Maybe she could get to the finals. She wondered how her baby boy would fight his friend. But then the tables turned around. All because Katsuki managed to grab Momo, swaying the fight in his favor. She cringed at how rough and violent he was. Shouldn't he be disqualified? He continued to hit the girl even after being called a winner. Poor Momo, her face was all bloody and swollen. She hoped the recovery girl would be able to heal her. He took it too far, Masaru said, looking displeased with what they've just watched. Huh? But he won. It's all that matters, Mitsuki replied, gazing at her husband weirdly. Inko scowled a bit. She hadn't seen Katsuki in quite a while, but watching him today, she couldn't help but question his behavior. She had hard time describing it. But she was sure of one thing. He didn't behave like heroes should. Izuku was fighting against Todoroki. She feared a bit for her baby boy, but believed he could win. Her phone pinged. She looked at it and saw a message from Alan. It read, "Enjoy the grand entrance." The music started playing and she immediately began tapping her foot and bobbing her head. She loved this piece. Inko, you know the song? Masaru asked, intrigued. Yes. It's from the old, pre-quirk band called AC/DC. Me and Izuku really like this one. Then her son came from the skies, made a flip and did a superhero landing, posing similar to the Iron Man. He had another armor ready. It gave the movie's Mark III vibe. Inko pouted a bit, seeing that suit wasn't the red gold, but she understood that Izuku wanted to make his own image. She wondered a bit about the boxes on his shoulder. Match begun and Izuku dominated it. But something was off. Her baby boy was too violent. He could end it quickly, but it seemed like he was dragging it on purpose. Was he mad at the boy for what he did to Mei? Judging from Todoroki, it looked like they talked about something, but she had no clue what the conversation involved. After winning, Izuku looked somewhere and his voice carried through the stadium. How was that for a toy? That toy just kicked your brat's ass into the next week. And you want him to exceed All Might? Don't make me laugh. Looks like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Both of you are incapable of solving situations that can't be handled by brute force. Oh, and for the record, I'm quirkless. Her jaw went slack. During his monologue the camera changed, showing them annoyed endeavor. Why did Izuku did it? It was so unlike him, especially that rude language. Her baby boy picked a fight with number 2 hero. She didn't know what to think of it. Mitsuki howled a laugh. Your son have some balls there, Inko. Who would have thought that quiet Izuku would declare a war on Endeavor? She didn't feel like laughing. Katsuki's fight against Ashido was a quick one. He just rushed at her, not afraid of girl's acid, and set up a powerful explosion, throwing the girl out of the ring. Looks like our boys are going to face each other, Masaru stated, folding his hands on his lap. Yeah. Mitsuki turned to her. Hope Izuku wouldn't be too mad for getting a second place. She grinned teasingly at her. I doubt it. She replied politely. But I'm more worried about Katsuki, when he brings home a silver medal. She smirked a tiny bit. The bet was made. And it involved good money. Normally Inko wouldn't do such a thing, as betting on her son doing something, but it was her baby boy. She was a good mother and believed in him. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the final round. Hold tight in your sits, because those two could blow you away. From 1A, the boy that literally blasted his way through the whole thing. Katsuki Bakugo. And now his opponent. The roof of the stadium began to close and 2 reflector lights pointed at the passage for her son. Massive amount of smoke was spewing out of it. The music played again, but this one was heavier. It was Iron Man by Black Sabbath. With first chord of a guitar 2 green lights shone inside the fume. When the first lyrics came, Izuku walked out slowly, his armor shining. The boxes were gone. Damn. That kid knows how to make an entrance. He looks like the final boss. Dear listeners, I have nothing left to say, except that Izuku Midoriya from 1H is here, ready to rock. He really needed to thank Momo for her idea. And Shinso-kun, his input with suggesting the smoke really made the whole thing better. The crowd was excited and Pomeranian was pissed beyond his usual scale. He grinned at that. Yeah, sure he got more attention than he wanted, but he guessed he would need to get comfortable with it when he'll finally become a hero. He opened his face mask and smirked at Firecracker. It only annoyed Blonde more. What's up Boom Boom Boy? Boy gritted his teeth and his features become more animalistic than ever. You fucking enjoy this, Deku? Just wait till I blast that smirk out of your fucking face. Oh no, I'm so scared. Big bad Pomeranian is going to bark at me. Izuku mocked him in fake fearful voice. Someone should get you a leash and take you to vet to see if you have rabies. His smirk stretched further. He heard Midnight laugh at his comment. Shut up or I'll kill you, Firecracker shouted. Just like you tried to do that with Momo twice, he said, snarling at Blonde. There was no reaction from Bakugo. I'd like to see you try. Izuku growled out those words and snapped back his faceplate. The fight begun and Pomeranian shoots straight at Izuku with his explosions. He waited till Blonde was close and attacked with a vicious right swing. Dodging under it, he grabbed the arm and swung Bakugo over his shoulder, making Firecracker hit the concrete painfully. Using his free hand, Blonde set up an explosion right into Suit's chest piece. His sneer turned into the look of surprise, when Armored Teen didn't waver. Instead Izuku threw Bakugo into the air and hit him with a repulsor blast, further pushing him up. Flying up, he quickly caught up to the Pomeranian and delivered strong haymaker right on into Firecracker's face, sending Blonde down, to crash on the floor. On the last second Bakugo used his quirk to slow down enough to land on his feet. He spat out the blood and growled, scowl marring his features. Had enough? Izuku asked, hovering in the air. You think that having a fancy armor means something? Pomeranian screamed, throwing his hands to the sides. I will blast it to bits. Then those 2 bitches will see just how pathetic, shitty nerd you are, Deku. Firecracker jumped out and used his quirk to steer towards Izuku, but he just blasted him off the skies with powerful repulsor blast. Blonde rolled on the ground and groaned in pain. You really think that Mei and Momo are that shallow to only befriend me, because I have a multi-billion, high-tech suit? Izuku let out a short, unamused laugh. They're not like all those people sucking up to you all the time, he sneered. Yeah, sure. Those 2 sluts like you for being yourself. Get fucking real, Deku. No one would ever like a quirkless fuck. Bitches are just fucking with you. Bakugo screamed, standing up, his jacket's front in shreds. Get out of that toy, so I can make you remember your place. Did he just a yes? He did. Okay, he planned to go easy on Blonde Menace. Play with him a bit and then just throw him off to humble him. Of course, rough him up a bit for almost killing Momo twice now. But Pomeranian just crossed a line. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Bakugo was leaving this place on a stretcher. He landed on the ground and started walking towards the firecracker. Blonde ran at him, aiming with a hook on the helmet, but the attack was caught effortlessly. Izuku gripped hard on the wrist, making Bakugo hiss. Another hit, this time the uppercut, was grabbed in similar hold. Pomeranian tried to use his quirk, but Izuku just steered the hands up and away from his body. Deploy cuffs, he ordered. The shoulder pieces of his armor opened and two bulky, metal rings shoot out from them, latching onto Firecracker's wrist. Then they expanded, covering the hands completely in a dome. Using a low-powered blast from chestpiece, he sent Bakugo away, making him land on his butt. The fuck are those? He questioned, before using his quirk. Then a blood-curdling scream filled the stadium. Pomeranian trashed on the ground, shouting curses left and right. Tears poured from his eyes. Black smoke rose from the cuffs. That view shouldn't bring him so much joy, but it did. A huge grin found his way onto Izuku's face. Clapping slowly, he walked forward. Congratulations, Bakugo. You've just gave yourself at least a second-degree burns and maybe even busted some bones. He stopped a few steps from the blonde. I've developed those cuffs for people whose quirks are based around their hands. Just like yours. He enjoyed the look of pure hate he got from Pomeranian. So in another words, you're quirkless now. He ran up to Firecracker and kicked him in the ribs, sending a good distance away. He was sure that some of them cracked. Bakugo stood up on wobbly legs. Letting out a roar, he charged at Izuku. Armored Teen met him in the middle. Dodging a straight punch, he jabbed Pomeranian on the face, then delivered an uppercut into his chin. Grabbing the blonde by shoulders, Izuku hit him with his knee on the stomach. Firecracker bended, coughing up a blood. A powerful, right hook sent Blonde sprawling on the floor. Bakugo took a painful breath and rolled onto his chest. Placing his arms on the sides, he began to rise up. Izuku placed his hand on Pomeranian's back, stopping his movement. Here's something that you may remember. Repulsor in the glove whined softly. Stay down, he hissed out. Blast shout out, downing Firecracker yet again. Blonde howled in pain. A perfect circle smoldered right between his shoulder blades. That's it. Katsuki Bakugo is unable to continue. Izuku Midoriya is a winner, Midnight called out. The crowd clapped and cheered. Present Mike rumbled some kind of commentary and fireworks shoot into the skies. But for Izuku it meant nothing. Crouching next to the Bakugo's face, he opened his faceplate and looked straight into his eyes. Try calling any of my important people names again and I'll make sure that you stay quirkless forever, he said in grave tone. And for the notice, for me you're never going to be a hero. People like you are villains. Snapping his mask back, he stood up and walked away into the passage. There, waiting for him were his friends. But none were smiling or cheering. Everyone wore somber expression. They heard everything, due to earpieces they had. Taking off his helmet, he allowed girls to hug him tightly. Izuku released a long sigh and buried his head in Momo's shoulder. How is a guy like him in the hero course? Shinso-kun asked angrily. Leaving the comfort of the group hug, he gazed at his precious people with sadness. Because that's what most of our society wants. Heroes with flashy, powerful quirks. It doesn't matter if they are assholes. As long as they have power, they're extolled. People with weak or villainous quirks are being told to give up by everyone. And quirkless? He let out a bitter laugh. If homicide was legal, I'm sure they'd get rid of us. Izuku blinked, his words catching up to him. Sorry, I'm Iya. No, Momo said, looking at the ground. You're right. I had a moments in my life when I had thoughts like that. That one of the important things to a hero is having a good quirk. Buddha. She gazed at him with regret. But being around you and Mei, I understood that what hero needs lies in different directions. Izuku smiled softly at those words. He felt proud that his actions lead to someone's realization about their corrupted world. Good for you, Yaoyorozu. You'll make a fine hero, Shinso-kun said, smiling kindly. She beamed up at his words. Thank you, Shinso-san. So will you. Teen scowled and looked away. His eyes narrowed. Doubt it. My transfer to hero course isn't likely to happen. I won't be a hero, he told them bitterly. Then let us help you, Mei shouted, jumping next to the boy. What? Shinso-kun asked. He was utterly perplexed. You heard me, we'll help you become a hero. Girl explained, grinning like a maniac. Izuku saw Momo nod and smile brightly at their friend. He followed her example. Yeah, we'll help you become a hero. That's what friends do. Friendsa. Shinso-kun whispered, a ghost of a smile gracing his lips. I'd like that.
So this was it for today. I will continue this story in next part. Till then, bye bye.